once again. And there is Smith roaming free, breaks a tackle. Ohio State strikes quickly from 45 yards.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Second and short, play action, leg way in trouble. Steps up and throws deep. It's caught. Badger.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
He's got to have it right now. And they take a downfield shot. And the catch is made. It's Ryan Williams, still spinning free. Touchdown Alabama, they answer in one play.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Levitt going to escape from harm and do more than that. Levitt lunging, leaping, touchdown, Sun Devils.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Jeremiah Love breaks free. Jeremiah Love trying to go 98. Touchdown! What a run in the first touchdown of the 12-team playoff.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
I saw this note today, and this was a story that was posted in the forum section of Sikkim365.com about the story that we'll discuss most of this first hour today about college football and the playoff and expansion and the leverage of the Big Ten and the SEC. Nothing that you really didn't know already because that has been discussed, but a few more nuggets. But this was an interesting note about it seems like there is never just any calm. You know, you went through the conference realignment and much, much more. Leave that up for a second, Garrett, if you don't mind, from Ross Dellinger from Yahoo, and we'll have Dan Wetzel today at 3:30. It's exhausting for the fans to deal with all of these changes every offseason, and it sucks to see my alma mater on the wrong side of it. Can't believe I'm saying it, but I'm beginning to like the NFL more now. I don't believe that last part of it. College football fan's a college football fan. But the story is that the Big Ten and the SEC have gained yet momentum again. It's like whenever they want to, and this is their time, they can have their discussions about the SEC and the Big Ten having 4 automatic qualifiers among what would be a 14-team, maybe 16-team college football championship playoff. The SEC then would maybe, it appears, one of the things they would do is, okay, we'll play 9 conference games. Right now they play 8. Ross Bjork, who's at Ohio State, was at A&M, said now that he's been a part of the Big Ten, the 9 games, he likes it. And then, of course, they would have their scheduling of some sort alliance. Some of this is something we already knew, but it appears as if, yet again, that the Big Ten and SEC are ready now to move forward, and basically you don't have to have unanimous approval from everybody else. And so this is just a matter of time, and there's meetings over the next week or 2 or month when it comes to that.
Whatever anybody who's not Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey can do to make sure there's not 4 AQs per those leagues, they need to do. And in Ross's article, it mentions that some of the higher-ups at ESPN aren't crazy about that because they don't want to alienate half the country. That's the direct quote. You're going to alienate half the country if you do that. And we are in a sad state of affairs in college athletics when 2 conferences, one of which got their way and got 4 teams in, one of them didn't get 4 teams in, threw a bitch fit about it for a month, and for now 2 months now, that they didn't get in. So this proposal that they had out there, now that they didn't get their way, they're deciding to go full steam ahead to make sure that they're the 2 conferences to get 4 teams in, even if they don't deserve to have 4 teams in each. In most years, they probably will. But this is not.
It's fine. You probably will, but you don't you shouldn't just say
No, you got to earn it.
Yeah.
That's what sports is.
You know how many people are guaranteed to make the playoffs in the NFC East?
0.
No,
just the champion.
One, the conference
champion.
Yeah.
Just the champion.
The division champion.
But yeah, so like just the division champion. So just, I mean, cut it out with this. We're better and it's harder in our league. Stop it. That is propaganda. It is absolute propaganda. And you didn't get your way, Greg Sankey. So now you're going full steam ahead, trying to ruin college football. And if it is 8 teams automatically, and even with the ones who are, it's an invitational. If you're guaranteed AQs beyond your conference champion, it is not a playoff, it's an invitational, and it cheapens the regular season in a way that I can't even begin to describe and is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised by it. These types of moves have been ongoing for 2-3 years in a row now. I mean, we've seen Greg Sankey, especially outwardly, make mention of what the SEC desires, what they want, and they've been pretty clear in their desires to gobble up as many playoff spots and as much of the money as possible without even having to actually lift a finger in order to do it. And I guess they technically have, because some of the models being used to justify the 4 teams per those 2 leagues, and then possibly 2 for the ACC, 2 for the Big 12, is based on like the previous decade. And so they've technically gone about earning that with the national championship wins and big marquee wins and TV ratings and all of that. But, I mean, now at this point, I just don't know if there's any stopping them from just doing whatever they want to do. And maybe we crossed that point long ago where, yeah, they were obviously the most popular leagues based on the schools they had. That became only cemented when you added all of the top schools that were out there at the time and available in Oklahoma and Texas and in Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA. And I mean, even the leftovers that haven't been picked apart are of constant mention, even though the ACC's kind of settled down a little bit in terms of it not feeling like it's some imminent thing going on. So they've gobbled up real estate. They've gobbled up the biggest brands. Now they use those brands in these calculations from the past decade. So anything that you actually did accomplish as the Big 12 from Oklahoma and Texas is automatically counted as the SEC now. Same thing for Oregon and Washington, counting towards the Big Ten and so on. So they got the some of the best from the other leagues. They've added that, and now they're using that to justify what they already had as far as an advantage goes, and now it's doubled their advantage, really, and they are basically in lockstep with the TV networks. We know the SEC ESPN relationship is airtight, and Fox and the Big Ten, although the Big Ten's multiple networks. And so, yeah, their fingerprints are all over this entire thing. All these parties that we've been talking about for 2 years, the Big Ten and the SEC and their subsequent TV networks, and they're the ones pulling the strings. And as much as Brett Yormark, as he says he will come armed with data to these meetings, and as much as, I'm sure the ACC will push back as much as they possibly can. Like, I just don't know what you're going to do about it. You threaten a break, and what do they immediately do? Well, fine, go ahead. And you don't really have a feasible option in front of you. So if you don't threaten the break, then what do? They threaten the break. So they've been, holding this blackmail card over them, or maybe blackmail is not the right word, but they've been holding this card over the Big 12 and the ACC for a while now of do what we say or else we leave. And I don't know how feasible that is, how quickly that could even happen, especially when you start taking into consideration things like basketball. But they're flexing all their muscle. Nobody's really doing anything about it because I don't know there's really anything anybody can do about it. And so if you're a fan of those leagues, I'm sure you feel like, your politician won or whatever, and you're not really too worried about the grand scheme of things. But if you're not a fan of those two leagues, or even if you are and you just are more a fan of college football than a ripoff of the NFL, then you're probably not too happy about it. But again, I don't know what there is to do about it. And so now we're reaching these stages where every single thing they've wanted to accomplish has been accomplished. Now they're going to cross schedule with each other, so that takes another week off the slate that might be an Oklahoma State playing in Auburn or somebody like that. And I don't know where it ends. I mean, I don't know how much more money they can squeeze out of this thing, but they're damn sure trying to squeeze every cent out of it and make sure it's theirs and theirs alone. And screw the rest is basically the messaging we've gotten over these last couple years.
And look, how much can you shove into something like expanding the playoff, expanding the NCAA tournament, which is part of this kind of conversation, which got loudly booed at Bama when Pete Thamel reported it the other day, and would be booed anywhere because they've got it good. They are trying to cram too much into this instead of improving what they have. How do you make the games better that you have? How do you do this? How do you enhance the other conferences so that you do feel like you have more of a level playing field? How do you do all those things as opposed to just shove so much of one thing down the viewing public's throat that it starts to suck? Because if you guarantee 4 teams in the SEC and Big Ten, you're going to have more years than not where it sucks because a couple of those teams probably shouldn't be there.
Yeah, and that means 8 of 14 or 8 of 16, whatever it might be, and then you're going to end up having some rematches, which can happen anyway because of the college football playoff. Even if it was for a national championship, a conference championship game could end up being a championship game when it was even 4.
This is very much a situation where it's reminiscent of a lot of things, but it's one of those deals where the last 2 years people have been kind of sounding the alarm bells of like, I don't think this is the best thing for everybody, and I don't know if this is the best thing for the greater game, and I don't know. No, it's cool. We love college football, says Greg Sankey. We're all about college football, and then the moment he has to be just the SEC commissioner, he's the SEC commissioner. But when he's questioned on that, he's all of a sudden Mr. America College Football, and I don't mean to just put a spotlight on him. It's not all him. He's doing what he's got to do for his league. But there's been plenty of people going like, I don't know if this is the best, and they're just storming right on through. They don't care. They don't care if you or I or Paul or whoever thinks this is better or not for college football. They'll cite immediately the rankings this year were the best. The interest level this year is the highest it's ever been. And to some extent, I think that's true. I think if you unpacked it on every level, maybe that's not always the case. But, I don't know if it's the best for the game, but the warning signs have been here for at least 2 years that this is what they were going to attempt to do, was take over as much as they possibly could when it comes to territory, TV slots, power, and authority. And they've seemingly done a good chunk of that over these last couple of years with the realignment moves made, the TV deals signed, and now total control of the entire, college football playoff system. I mean, it's their world. They're the ones creating and doing all of the work now for all intents and purposes. How long the committee is for this world, I don't know. Because they're really not the ones calling the shots, it feels like, moving forward. So, this was all foreshadowed. In some cases, this was outright said, with a nod and a wink maybe sometimes. But, it's their world, and everybody's just kind of living in it, and I don't know if there's anything that anybody can do about it.
I understand that what Petiti and Sankey actually at the end of this article was not quoted. It's a quote from him from earlier, back when some of this was being discussed. My whole thing is that if you're so good and you have all of the trophies and a lot of the championships, all of the last couple of years, the Big Ten does, I don't understand why you need automatic qualifiers. I understand why you would want them, but I don't understand why if you are the John Holmes of college football, why do you have to be proven that you are?
You just answered your question, though.
Yeah. No, I get it, but here's the thing. Now, I've seen Paxton. It's a super league. ESPN, the quote, Paul, that you mentioned, is that they're not so sure, at least they say that maybe they're not so sure this would be in their best interest. But I don't know if ESPN, even though we say they have a lot to do with how these matchups and who makes it or whatever, and I'm sure they do, ESPN's a little trepidation about moving forward if you eliminate a third or more of the country.
I would think they're the only ones who could legitimately stop it. I think they would be the only ones that could legitimately stop it.
And what also doesn't make sense is that some of their partners that they have relationships with in television and agreements with their network are some of the same teams in which if they let this move forward, they're basically hurting them.
Yeah, no, they are, and that's bad. It's bad for business all the way around. And, I remember hearing Mark Cuban years ago. It was the first time I'd ever heard this slogan, and maybe I was naive at the time, but he said, and he was talking about how he thought the NFL was getting too big for its britches, which clearly hasn't happened yet. But he said, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. And right now, college football is turning into a big old hog because they're just They don't care about the entire viewing populace. They don't care about the fans. And the thing that's different about college football and the NFL is it's not fair to really compare the two in that probably the majority of college football fans, although it might be a thinner margin than you would think, but I would think more than 50% of college football fans have some skin in the game where they or their parent or whatever went to the university that they love. Only 1% of the population, them or their parent was an NFL player. Like, it's not that much. But in college football, you love the school that you love mostly because you either went there or your dad went there or your mom went there or your grandpa went there. You have some skin in the game. In the NFL, I like the Cowboys, but it's because my dad liked the Cowboys, but I'm not a Dallas Cowboy. I was never once. They never called me. They never drafted me. I never got a free agent look. None of that stuff. In college, like, I love Florida State because I was a Florida State student.
But I love Nebraska because I was born there.
Yeah,
but I didn't go there.
Yeah, so like you're in the other side of it. But again, you're also you and Craig as Nebraska and Oklahoma fans. You guys are fine. You guys are going to be in the, like, your conferences are taken care of. But someone like me, someone like Emory, Andrew, that are Baylor grads, and FSU, like, we have to hope that we're the two best teams.
Well, FSU will be a part of it. And that's when people hear the Super League. Here's the thing. This is not really any breaking news. It's just that there are meetings coming up. For example, at the end of this month, what is today, the 17th, in 8 days, just over a week from now, the college football playoff leaders and those who make decisions are going to meet. And I don't know what they'll actually come out of that with, any kind of this is what we're going to do. I don't know about that. Here's my thing. I don't think anybody gets a freebie. I don't think you should get that. And that's in the way I feel sometimes, even outside of sports. But if you are good, go earn it. Go win your conference championship or be in the top 5 or 10, and then you will get an invitation to what is the chance to win a national title. Just be who you are. You'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really heavenly, ideal, positive way to look at things of the way they should be. Sorry to smash that for you. Here's reality. They don't care about that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how many times we have to say it. They don't care about Joe college football fan that roots for Baylor. They don't care. You don't bring enough of an audience for them to care. I think there's a level that ESPN has to care, but I first of all, I think it's weird when we try to make them out to be like some boogeyman pulling all of these strings. I think that they have their wants and their desires. I also think they have contracts with other leagues, and does that mean they're going to prop them up the same way they do others? No, because those others make them, or one in particular makes them a lot more money. So they're always going to favor them. They have such a large investment in them. They're just automatically going to be more biased because they've had so much success, so much money, so many eyeballs pour in through the SEC. That's their baby, right? Yeah, I think they would prefer them in any scenario. I also think they do have some level of care because they've got to fill out their network during Saturdays in the fall to some extent, although we've seen how more and more is getting shifted off that to streaming platforms and whatnot. So I don't know what ESPN's long-term goal is here. I don't know if they're the big bad boogeyman. They trip over themselves a lot to be the big bad boogeyman, quite frankly. I think maybe they're being used as that example when really we should be looking directly at Greg Sankey or directly at the Big Ten, and Tony Petitti, as opposed to this four-letter network that's been, I mean, half a mess for the last decade, quite honestly, in basically everything they've done. So I don't know that I'm giving them full credit for organizing this. But yeah, the power brokers they're working alongside could certainly be the ones. And I think Greg Sankey, Mr., let me quote Art of War, and let me, quote this and that, Mr. Philosophical and always kind of tinkering and always sort of, playing chess in the background. I think he's certainly been, whittling away at ideas like this for a while. But I'm just somebody who's not going to ever be foolish enough to think that everybody's going to go, you know what? This isn't the right thing to do. We need to grant more access. Sure, it'll mean less money for us, and sure, it'll mean less guaranteed playoff spots, but we're going to do the right thing for middle America. Come on. They're not thinking that way at all. They don't give a damn about Iowa State. They don't give a damn if Boston College never makes the college football playoff. They care about money, TV, ratings, and all that comes with that. And these two leagues provide the majority of that. So they're the ones in control. They're the ones pulling the strings. Who's the big, bad puppet master above it all? I think the commissioners are ultimately. But, yeah, they're working alongside the networks because the networks have a mutual relationship where they all make big money and big projects together. And that's not going to change. If anything, as we're seeing, it's only going to keep rolling further downhill. But I do think when I saw this story today, it reminded me of all of the talk about the NBA over the weekend, and I've made mentions of this plenty of times over like the last year or so, just goofing on like all of the elaborate courts that they use and just these things they're trying to do to make it interesting. It almost feels like that with the constant tinkering of college football, of like everything's just being tinkered. Now, the NBA is doing that out of desperation because they're trying to find ways to make people care outside of the playoffs. And it's not really working all that effectively, but they're still getting big TV deals. College football is not really needing to do that. It's just happening because there's two entities that can do that, and so they're doing it because they can and because they can grab power and all that comes with it. And so we've seen the warning signs, we've heard the warning signs, and it's here, and they're the ones, that are in control. And like I said a few moments ago, I don't know how you really stop it. And for college football fans in general that aren't, Mr. Alabama or Mr. South Carolina or Mr. Michigan, I think the sport we love is still here and it's going to be around, but I can certainly understand if there's some people who become a bit disillusioned with a lot of it, especially during the offseason when there's constantly things like this going on that are the benefit for a couple and not the benefit for everybody.
There's a part here, and by the way, Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports, will join us here in about 10 minutes. The 14-team model, 4-4-2-2, 1+1, which is Notre Dame, aligns mostly with conference strength over the last 11 years. Since the 2014 playoff, which is the first year they started the playoff, the SEC's had 52 teams. Inside of the top 14 of the college football rankings, that doesn't mean they've had 52 teams get in the playoff. But the Big 12 has 23, the Big 10, 51. Then I saw this note. The data, considering conference realignment shifts, Oklahoma is counted towards the SEC figures. They've been in that league for not even a full year. And so I'm like, so the Big 12 gets that pulled away from them. They weren't a part of the SEC, and Utah was not a part of the Big 12, so the Big 12 should not get Utah.
But they do, though.
But they do. So that's a little bit funny math.
But that's flawed data on all counts.
Yeah. Yes,
if you're going to use that.
It's like, why do you use the last 11 years?
Yeah.
Like, well, because 2014 was the first.
Okay. Well, that makes sense then. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, at least that makes sense.
But the data that they need to also be looking at over that is, they're just not fully expanding it out to where it's not pigeonholed into exactly what they want.
No, it's going to say what they want on the other side of it.
It's going to say what they want on the other side of it. Yeah. And the thing is that now we live in the internet age where every piece of information is available, but you can just find what you want, not what you need, what the real thing. There's so many lies out there, it's hard to sift to the truth. So you can manipulate the data the way that you want it, which they have. And again, the data, none of this matters. It's the fundamental nature of sports is last year doesn't matter. What do you think the Eagles are going to say on the first day of training camp? What are they going to say? Yep. You're like, hey, how are you going to build momentum? Last year doesn't matter. Yep. It's all a new day, blah, blah, blah. It's one of the tired sports cliches, and it's tired and it's a cliche because it's true. So last year doesn't matter. So why does 11 years ago matter?
Philadelphia winning the Super Bowl a week or so ago does not guarantee them anything during the 2025 season.
Just like nothing is guaranteed for Ohio State.
Yep, that's right.
Nothing is guaranteed for Ohio State.
Obviously, ask Michigan what happened with
nothing is guaranteed. Again, it's the new era. Michigan went from a national championship undefeated team that dominated throughout the year to a team that didn't even have a quarterback and barely made a bowl game. Yep. Now they had a nice push at the end of the year, but that's going to happen more often than not. Now, look, Florida State was the extreme example, 13-0 to 2-10.
Yep.
Like, what are you talking about here?
That's my whole thing.
So they have that. We're in a new era. 11 years ago, when there was no transfer portal and no NIL, matters, nothing. It's a minuscule assault of just nothing, a grain of salt.
Everything we say on the 25th, they're going to meet a lot of the leaders that are involved with the college football playoff. commissioners, both Jim Phillips, the ACC, Brett Yormark, the Big 12, group of 5 leaders, are saying that they will fight this as much as they can. Conundrum is not someone I agree with, or he with me, or a lot of you with him a lot, but he did make this comment. Those conferences outside of the Big Ten and the SEC had a chance to put their foot down in the last year, and they kind of, I don't know if they broke or they blinked or whatever, but they could have at least put up more of a fight. And if there's blood from it, okay. That's fine.
That was the conversation is like, I mean, how much do you push before? I mean, basically what they had the choice to do was keep pushing until the SEC or the Big Ten did what they ultimately were going to do, and they pull the rug out from everybody and they go do their own thing. I think you should have called them on that bluff.
I did too.
And so instead they go, well, maybe you'll get a couple of qualifiers. Look, you get 2. We get 4 automatically, and maybe an at-large.
And there's another thing. Yeah, that's a 4 minimum.
They're getting 4 apiece no matter what. So if it's 14, they're 8 of 14 automatically. If it's 16, they're half the field automatically. Based on since 2011 and whatever else junk that points towards whatever they're wanting to accomplish. I mean, whatever it says, it's in their favor. We know that much. But, yeah, I mean, hindsight being 2020, I think there were plenty of people saying it at the time as well to call the bluff. And I don't know if it's politics.
All 3 of us did.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We absolutely did. And I don't know if it's politics. I don't know what it is. But, yeah, they had their chance. And I guess the fear of, well, what if they do leave was something that froze them into inaction because it was just too big of a risk to take. But I kind of was always of the thought, and I don't know if I ever expressed it this way, but I definitely have felt this way for quite a while of like, how do you not know they're just going to stab you in the back even if you agree to go along with them anyways? Because quite frankly, if you ask me what I think, and I don't think Greg Sankey's like Satan incarnate or anything like that, but I do think he's definitely one of the puppet masters. And I definitely don't believe that he has the best interest of Texas Tech in mind when he's making his decisions.
No.
Or Georgia Southern, or anybody that's not one of the teams that he's already brought on board.
Or should Yormark care about Georgia
No, and he
Tech?
shouldn't either.
Yeah.
I definitely do not believe Petitti or Sankey whatsoever in terms of realignment and them, cooling. I feel like the moment they can go and slit another throat, they will do that. And then go, oh, it's just best for college football. Look, more big matchups. Look over here. Don't, that kind of thing. So I don't trust those guys as far as I could throw them. And you probably never should have if you were the Big 12 or the ACC either. But you had a choice. You call them on their bluff, or you go along and you feel like, well, let's get what we can. We're still a part of the club. But the problem is they're going to, move to another clubhouse here pretty soon, and it's going to be smaller. Although the 2 rooms will be a lot. There's going to be 2 rooms, and the rooms will be gigantic, extravagant, and they'll be beautiful and laced out. But it was 4 rooms. Mm-hmm. Now it's going to be 2, and now you're going to be like, well, you get the hallway.
Yeah.
Like you get the hall. You can put a sleeping bag there. It's going to be great. Meanwhile, they got the fireplace going. They got the big screen TV. But you're a part of the club, though.
Hey,
you're inside. You could be outside. You could be freezing to death outside. So they've kind of brought them along of like, you're still with us, right? The Power Four is making all of the new legislation. The Power Four. And then when it comes to decisions like this, there's all of a sudden 2 of them.
Yeah, no, because the Power Four, do they care about the group of 5s?
No, and that's the thing. I don't think Brett Yormark cares about
Now they want to complain if they're not a part of the 2?
Right.
So it's kind of hypocritical.
It is hypocritical, and that's why I don't go all gung-ho and like conference pride till I die, Big 12 or bust. I like the Big 12. I'm somebody who doesn't necessarily have to root for the conference any longer, but does cover somebody, and I do root for it because I enjoy it. I enjoy its history. I enjoy the way it survived. I enjoy the teams in the league, but they probably should have called the bluff a time or 2 beforehand, and I guess they're just happy to be along for the ride, although at some point, you're riding on the back of the pickup truck. You're not inside the cab anymore.
Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports. I reached out to him, and he will join us. In fact, next, Ross Dellinger with the story. I saw a little bit with Dan and Pat Forty and also Ross Dellinger. I think Ross might join us tomorrow. We have a lot to get to. We appreciate your time. This is 365 Sports. PettyClinicLowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, used to be. 1 out of every 3 to 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone, and it could be all sorts of symptoms. It could be the one that gets most of the attention, which is your sex drive and all of that, your performance. But it also could be extra body fat that you're pretty active. You have a good diet. You're in pretty good shape, but for whatever reason, that's kind of developed. That could be just enough of a drop in your testosterone to create that. Your lack of energy. You're not sleeping right. Just things are messed up. Dr. Petty can help you out. Contact him, pettycliniclowt.com. Tell him I sent you. They will set you up to get your blood work. Take care of that appointment, all of it. Get the results, and then look at them and get back with you. And if your results are fine, he'll tell you that. If they're not, he can give you an option to increase your testosterone level so you can get back to being the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, used to be. pettycliniclowt.com.
Month at Allen Samuels in Waco. Right now, drive home a 2025 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab or Ram Lone Star Crew Cab, both with massive $15,000 off MSRP. Looking for unbeatable value? Drive home a Ram 1500 Tradesman Quad Cab starting at just $35,995, or upgrade to a Tradesman Crew Cab for only $37,995. These deals won't last long. Hurry to Allen Samuels today.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
If you want quality and personalized service for all your air conditioning and heating needs, call Tradesman Services. They're a family-owned and operated company that has served Texans for over 30 years. Tradesman offers maintenance plans starting at just $12 per month and a free service call for all new customers. They're also experts in geothermal design, installation, and service. Visit them online at coolingwaco.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Mentioned the story today. Ross Dellinger was yesterday evening, and I don't think he ever sleeps at night. He's like one of those vampires. Slammed out the story about what we discussed in the first half hour, and we're joined by our great friend Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports, with us on 365 Sports. Dan, as always, thank you very much for your time. Do you think the Big 12 and the ACC were scared to put their foot down, and will they be scared to do it again as this moves forward?
I'm not sure. Not sure if they're scared, but I wouldn't be. I know that there is the implied threat is that the Big Ten and SEC could just go out on their own. I don't necessarily think that is nearly as feasible as big of a threat as maybe they would like you to believe. First off, it would forever alter, if not wreck, the fabric of college athletics. And you'd have people like Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, the commissioners of the SEC and the Big Ten, going down as the all-time sporting villains in this country, which I don't really believe is anything that they would want, knowing them. I think there's enormous political ramifications. You know, when you think about just in the state of Texas, obviously, Texas and Texas A&M are big schools and have a lot of power, but what about all the politicians that represent your community and Fort Worth and Lubbock and El Paso and all these other places? I don't think ESPN wants that because you're turning off vast places in the country, let alone fan bases that are considerable. I don't think Fox wants it. I don't think CBS wants it. I don't think anybody wants it. So I really don't believe that they would do that. So I think there's more power in calling the bluff of the Big 12 and ACC and the others. That said, play poker, calling a bluff is tricky. Mm-hmm. You got to call it, right? And it's kind of high stakes. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Dan, part of this with the automatic qualifiers, and I thought this last year, and last year they used it to get more money out of the deal so they could say, like, look, we get this percentage and the rest of you are lucky to get this percentage. Do you think that's the same concession they would make again if they don't get their AQs?
I mean, at the end of the day, everything's about money in this country. So perhaps, but it's really weird. We talked at length on College Football Inquirer about this with Ross Dellinger and Pat Forty and I. And Ross said if you do all the things, if you expand this playoff and the SEC can go to 9 games and you have a Big Ten SEC scheduling alliance, all stuff, it could mean $100 million a year for the SEC and the Big Ten. And it sounds like a lot, but there's 34 teams in those two leagues. So we're talking $3 million each a year, maybe. So it's just really not that much money. And, to alter the way college football is played, that's the part I'm really more concerned about. It's just like, are we going to have a sport where the goal is finish top 6 in your conference? So some kind of planning thing, like, is that what we're doing? Like, talk about changing the regular season or diminishing the regular season. Like, what are we up to here? I just think it's such a bold move for such a small amount of money, relatively speaking. Texas, Ohio State, these are $250, $60 million a year athletics budgets. So you're talking, 1.5%, and we're going to do all of this. Maybe it's money, they'll do it, but I'm just not really sure what they're up to. I don't understand. If you listen to our podcast, my big question is why? Where's the problem? This is a solution in search of a problem. I don't know where the problem is. The committee did a fine job. The playoff is 1 year old. Nobody watched that first round and said, "Boy, we need more teams in." Why are we doing this? So the Big Ten and the SEC can make an extra $3 million a year per school. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
And I guess, Dan, that's why it's hard to call the bluff, right? Because you have to assume there's something up their sleeve. Why else go to all these efforts for minimal gain? So if it wasn't really anything on the other side of it that was all that spectacular, then yeah, I think you'd feel great to call the bluff. But the unknown that you're speaking of is like, I don't know. It could be nothing, but it could absolutely be that nuclear bomb that's set off for the ACC and the Big 12 in particular. It's just it's a hard position for Brett Yormark to be in because all of his fans are clamoring for him to do something and call the bluff, and yet, for all he knows, he opens the other side of the door, and the Big 12's lucky to have 1 AQ, for example.
Yeah, and if you don't need to know a lot of history here to know why we're in this position. Is because the ACC and the Big 12 went along with Big 10 and created that alliance, 5 years ago when Texas and Oklahoma decided to go to the SEC. And the Big 12 is obviously different leadership then, but the Big 12 and the ACC, they fell for they thought they had a deal with the Big 10, and they didn't. Or the Big 10 just walked away from the alliance. And the commissioner of the Big Ten now runs the Chicago Bears. He never cared about college athletics, to where, I think what I hate about this is we have so many administrators who this is a job, this is a stepping stone, this is a resume builder to get to something else. And the rest of us who love college athletics, not just, parts of it, not just, Ohio State, Michigan, but like all of it, not even just Baylor, TCU, but like, I want El Paso to have a team. Maction. I want right? I want all of that. If you love college athletics, you love the fabric of the entire thing. One of my favorite stories right now is the Maine Black Bears hockey team is in the top 5. I love that Maine can have a team, right? Vermont won the men's soccer title. University of Vermont. I love that. I like all of it. And I don't want 34 teams. I got that in the NFL. It's great. Love the NFL. But that's what that is. This is something different. And I hate to lose all that. And we have too many administrators to just show up and they're like, well, look at the numbers. That makes sense if it's only about the numbers. But it shouldn't be more than that. And I still have a lot of faith. I know he's the villain right now in a lot of eyes, but they said Greg Sankey won't do that. But that's what got us in that problem was, we got to form an alliance against the SEC, and they turned down a 12-team playoff that would have run for 12 or 14 years. They had the golden goose, and they got all panicked over the SEC taking Texas and Oklahoma. It wasn't the SEC's fault. Who the heck wouldn't have taken Texas and Oklahoma in their league?
Right.
Everyone wants them, right?
Right.
Like everybody wants those two schools. And it's not their fault for leaving. You're allowed to go, right? You can't take it personal. And so that's what got us in that spot. And Yormark's gotten a bad deal because the past Big 12 leadership failed the league. And so here we are. But there's just a lot at stake here. And it's unfortunate because where's the problem? Like where everybody's making tons of money. Everybody's making tons of money. The players are making money now. The coaching salaries go up. The AD's coach salaries go up. You won't find a Division I football coach that flies commercial anymore. The business is booming, and they're trying to gut it anyway. And it's like, what point is enough? It's not like the sport is failing or college athletics is failing. It's booming. It's unbelievable. And yet we have these small forces going, I want more. I want more. I want more. I want more. It's like, you already got enough.
Dan, also, wouldn't it? I mean, to me, it also, just in a PR sense, it looks like the SEC didn't get exactly what they wanted in year one. And so they're throwing a fit and trying to change the game. And they didn't get 4 teams. Okay, maybe next year you will. But also basing the numbers on something that happened, 14 or 11 years ago doesn't make any sense considering how much the game has changed in the last 3. That those factors don't apply anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, I think the Big Ten came up with the 4-4, the 4 automatic bid idea, but it does look like the SEC is the one pouting. My guess in a 12-team playoff is if we have a 12-team playoff over a 10-year period, like 7 or 8 of the years, you're going to have 4 SEC teams and 4 Big Ten teams, right? It took a wild buzzer-beating field goal by Clemson in the ACC championship game to get 2 ACC teams in. Otherwise, it's going to be 1 and Alabama's going to get in. I also think the problem with the rankings is, that they do a ranking each week, and which makes no sense. And it boxed consideration of a debate between Alabama or South Carolina and SMU, or that process is flawed, and that's what got them kind of banked out. But most years you're going to get 8 of the 12. You're going to get 2/3 of the field. But instead you want to guarantee your 8. But you want to expand the field and change the way the sport gets played. And it just has real ramifications when you start giving 4 automatic bids. The funny part is the percentage of teams in the field that will be SEC and Big Ten actually will drop, because they'll probably end up with 8 of 14. And, that's, I think, 57%. And maybe they get 9 and they get into like 63%, but it's still not 8 of 12. So there's actually more access for the ACC and Big 12, and I think that's the one positive you can take out of this. I just dislike the idea of like, hey, fine, you get one bid, and then let's compete for those spots. Just go compete for them, and you get them. It's very rare that you're going to have a fourth place SEC team that's not good enough. And as you point out, saying, well, this is how good the league was 5 years ago, dude, that was a totally different world. That isn't how it works anymore. Like NIL, transfer portal, that isn't how it goes. It's a totally different ball game in college football, basketball, everything. And so I don't care I know how good the SEC was in 2015 and 16 and 18 and all. They were the best, no question. Are they going to be the best going forward? I think they'll be really good, but they're not going to dominate like that. They haven't been in the title game in 3 years now.
Dan, a lot of the times when you hear about some of these moves, the people that are in favor of are obviously fans of like those two leagues because they're benefiting. And from the TV network's perspective as well, it's like, oh, look at all these big games. It's more big games. Now, you'd think that every game is suddenly like Alabama, Ohio State, even though that's not the case. But what are your thoughts on more big games by way of a Big Ten SEC scheduling partnership as has been talked about?
I'm a fan. I'm never going to be against big games. I'm never going to be against more games, all of that. But, like, I also don't run a television network. So,
yeah,
I don't know. It's like, what's a big game? If you really care about the sport, there's a lot of big games. You know, like you get really intrigued by something that isn't necessarily like you just like the casual fan just goes, oh, Ohio State, oh, Tennessee. Those are two big schools. I've seen those guys. I'll watch. If you really love the sport, you can be excited about, you know, I remember like Arizona State went and played Texas State, right? Mm-hmm. Like I was like, that's a big game.
That was an awesome game.
Yeah, to me it was a big game because I was like, I wonder if Texas State can do this, and I was very intrigued with Arizona. Like, what's a big game? So yeah, you'll get more big brands. I'm not going to be opposed to that, but a lot of times that's a game. Whatever. There's a lot of games. There's 134 teams. Again, the beauty of this sport is that it has 134 teams, and it's a total. I want 134. I don't want 34.
Dan, what Paul brought up about going back 11 years, that's when the playoff expanded to 4. What, if anything, is Philadelphia Eagles guaranteed by winning the Super Bowl a couple of weekends ago next year? Nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
Nothing. And that's the biggest, baddest league. Yeah, nothing.
The worst draft pick.
Yep.
Yeah, they get the worst draft pick. That's what they got.
And also by expanding the playoffs for another 2, 4, whatever amount of teams, and then if the Big Ten and SEC also have a scheduling deal, are we going to start to see even more rematches of those big games? Which, again, if it's a big game, it's a big game. Does it matter?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you probably would see more of them. I don't know. I don't know how they would do that. And my thing is like, what about there's 4 in the SEC and the ACC. There are 4 traditional rivalry games: Clemson, South Carolina, Florida State, Florida, Georgia Tech, Georgia, and Louisville and Kentucky. And like, would we lose those so you can have an alliance with a Big Ten team? And I said on our pod, it was like, okay, you're going to tell South Carolina fans we're no longer playing Clemson every year after 100 years of playing them, but you get a home and home in Iowa. Oh, in Iowa, you're no longer playing Iowa State every year, but you get to play South Carolina. Like, I don't want to play South Carolina. I want to play Iowa State. Like, that's where my brother went to school, and that's where my neighbor. Like, this is you still got to have some of this stuff. So it's just such a weird dynamic. It just runs counter to how the sport's always been run and what makes it so special. I'm pro playoff. I'm pro ideas. I'm pro solutions. I just want to know, like, where's the problem that we're trying to solve?
Do you think
everyone?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
There's nothing here. There's nothing here. You know.
Yeah. Do you think ESPN has any power or enough power? They have power to get a little bit antsy. They get a little antsy with this because they're how they may look, or because in a way, aren't they also then taking food off the table from some of their own partners that they have TV deals with in the ACC and the Big 12?
Absolutely. They want they want it to be a national sport. They're also worried that, backlash of those fans. And then also, if the ACC is not as good, well, what are they doing with these games? They don't need, they want it all to work. They want a national sport. I am fully convinced of that. So ESPN will have some juice at being able to push back. How much? I don't know. I don't know how much of this is just bluffing. How much of this is, like you said, trying to get a little more money or some other concession. I don't know, but none of it really makes a ton of sense to me.
Dan, they also, have shoved in the announcement about maybe expanding the NCAA tournament to 76 teams. They just right now are in the we can't leave well enough alone, are they?
Yeah, it's another one, a solution. No, who's asking for this? Anyone other than some coaches who need their bonus? This is the thing about the NCAA basketball tournament. The regular season ends and we have conference tournaments, right? Every team is eligible to still make the NCAA basketball tournament. That's your play-in round. We have 356 teams or something, whatever it is. Pretty much all of them. There's a few leagues that don't invite everyone to their conference title because they're too big, like the Big Ten, actually. But pretty much everyone goes into like March 8th or March 3rd and says, I got a shot to still win the national title. Why would we need to expand the field again when it's already expanded? You could be 0-28 and go into your conference tournament and win it and be in the field. And you could be a 16 seed, but you could technically then win all the way and win 6-7 more games and then finish the season with 11 wins and they're national champ. Like, we don't need to expand it. It's already expanded. I don't know anyone asking for it. There's not this huge amount of money. Those games up in Dayton do not get huge TV ratings. I don't know it's just not. It doesn't make any sense that anyone wants this. It's a solution in search of a problem. It's someone with an abacus running numbers, going, well, why not? Instead of saying, well, no. What makes it special is it's really hard to get into this tournament.
Dan, thank you very much, buddy. Appreciate it. Dan Wetzel with us from Yahoo Sports as we start off this week on this Monday, February the 17th. We'll also have more at what you're saying in the chat room. You could always hit us up on the text line, which I don't mention as much, and I need to, at 254-339-1122. We're not done. That was Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports. And we'll hear from Ralph Russo of theathletic.com here in also just a moment. There's some good stuff to get to when it comes to the Big 12 and basketball. There's a game tonight, 9 o'clock tip here in Waco between Arizona and also Baylor. We'll discuss that too. And this is 365 Sports. The Baylor Club, they just had an amazing week with Valentine's Week. All sorts of people getting great food, great cuisine. One of the things I got feedback from was the food that was served on Valentine's night, the 14th on Friday evening, or throughout the week was fantastic. People are used to that because the chefs, the executive chefs do such a great job. But also the way that the event and the atmosphere was set up too on that Friday night for anybody that was able to go have dinner with their Valentine, with their date, with whoever it might have been, or just you and a couple other people that went there and just enjoyed it. So that's what they also do. Yes, the food, the cuisine is phenomenal, and they also share new ideas with you, the member, at the Baylor Club. Tell them if you go there or the next time you do that you're a member of watching what we do on 365 Sports, and there are partnership opportunities for you between joining the club, how much it costs, the initiation fee, or even monthly dues. The Baylor Club inside McLean Stadium off I-35 in Waco.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
football and tailgate season. If you want product for the grill or smoker, charcoal, seasonings, marinades, sauces, Waco Custom Marketplace is your home to help prep, cook, and enjoy your food. Tailgate must-like brisket, tri-tip, fresh-made burgers, sausage, chicken wings, and if you want steaks, call in your order and pick them up. Bacon wrap fillets or any kind of ribeyes. USDA Select, Choice, and Prime that melt in your mouth. House-made sausage and jerky. Also, Waco Custom Marketplace, a one-stop shop for tailgating, barbecue, cook-offs, and family get-togethers, fundraisers with fair prices to you, the customer. A bakery with fresh baked bread and kolaches. There's cold beer, wine, and soft drinks. Serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. A cut above the rest. Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Saw this from Robert Griffin III, Heisman Trophy winner, just a minute ago, and Ralph Russo of theathletic.com is our guest. The soul of college football is dying because of money, allowing the Big Ten and SEC to get 4 automatic bids into another expanded playoff dilutes the importance of winning. 4 lost non-conference champions don't belong in the college football playoff. The proposal changes open the door for a monopoly of the sport. The business of college football is trying to destroy it. We are joined by Ralph Russo. Doesn't mean you have to agree with Robert Griffin III or not, but Ralph, thanks for your time. You had a story about everything going on today. What was your reaction, or what is your reaction to what might be now just around the corner?
Yeah, I think, from the standpoint of having covered this stuff, the direction we're heading with another field, with a larger field, and the possibility, or probably a strong possibility, of some automatic bids divided up from through the conferences, it feels like there's been a march toward this. So I don't feel particularly stunned by the development, because I just feel like we've been moving steadily toward this direction. I will say this, I guess, one of the quotes that was in my story, and it sort of clarifies things. If you think of the fact that this playoff format was concocted at a time when there was a Power 5 and a pretty potent group of 5 conference in the AAC with UCF and, a bunch of teams that are now in the Big 12, just the world of college football was very different in 2019 when this thing started being put together. And essentially I had an athletic director, and a couple of them actually referenced this, but one in particular just said, this format, this playoff was not devised for this alignment of the conferences. So when I think people look at it, I think outsiders look at it and are like, why are you changing it already? Why are we going back in and expanding more? And I think the people on the inside who are looking at this playoff are saying, no, we're changing it because it doesn't fit what we have. It needs big changes because the world around it has changed. So I think it's the little difference between the way the fans look at it, and I completely understand why they look at it that way, and the way the people on the inside look at it, as if to say, listen, this system, worked a couple of years ago, but it doesn't work now.
Well, and that's all well and good, Ralph, but why throw in the AQ piece of it? If it's expansion, then fine. Expand it to 16, but the automatic qualifier part of it is where they took a thing and they now said, well, we want to make sure based on some old, outdated information, if they want to say the sport's not the same, well, it certainly isn't the same as it was 11 years ago by trying to use the data they're using now.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's the place where I even have a hard time coming along with the idea that you need to carve out these spots. So the argument, but I'll do the best I can to give you the arguments that I hear, right? The arguments I hear are, it takes some, and this is something that I don't think I quite made it into our story, but sort of, on the cutting room floor, is it alleviates a certain amount of, the subjectivity, right? And so you don't really need a selection committee, or you're not putting as much on a selection committee other than overall seeding if the teams themselves are basically playing their way in through various, play-in games via their conference standing and then some playing games at the end on championship weekend. You're creating an atmosphere. So that takes sort of the subjectivity and you don't have to have these arguments about strength of schedule constantly and how strength of schedule should be weighed in. I think that there's some arguments to if your playoff spots are guaranteed or there are AQs within that you play into the conference, that allows for more vigorous and robust out-of-conference scheduling. And if you look at what the SEC and the Big Ten are trying to do in terms of playing more games against each other, that would lead, they are more comfortable doing that if they know that they have a certain amount of guaranteed spots in the playoff. Guys, listen, I understand why this would rankle a lot of people. I don't necessarily think it's a great idea either, but all I'm trying to do is give you a sense of what the arguments are on the other side. But I can totally understand the idea of why are we designating right off the bat these two conferences more worthy than the other conferences? Doesn't that end up being sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy? Don't you end up essentially, if you deem these two more than the other two, what you're going to make it is harder for the other two to catch up.
Yeah, no, and appreciate the way you're framing everything and making it make sense for a lot of people, just the bigger picture on that. I guess the unknown is too scary for the two leagues to call that bluff, though, huh, Ralph? I mean, because I think there's a lot of fans that they don't have as much actual skin in the game that from the outside go, Brett Yormark needs to call their bluff on this, or, the ACC needs to do this or do that. And granted, they've got their own issues under their own houses, but there's got to be a reason why they don't do that, right? And is it just the fear of the unknown is too great? I mean, sure, you don't think the SEC and the Big Ten can go hold their own basketball tournament right now, but I don't know, man. They seem to be pretty smart and working on a lot of things behind the scenes. I wouldn't be surprised if they're like, you want to call our bluff? Okay, fine. It's just you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you're Brett Yormark, for example.
Yeah, I think and only because I know you're mostly talking about football, but you did mention the basketball. I do think the basketball is a little different dynamic because there are such a much bigger field there that I think that there's a lot more willingness within the A4 and more specifically the Big Two there to, continue to have these smaller conferences and AQs. Now, exactly what that means to have where they're going to place some of those AQs, that's a little different. But if you want to stick to football, I think because the field is relatively small, I just don't know. Here's what I'd say. I don't know what the alternative is. Right? They've agreed to this contract to participate in this playoff, but the new deal that goes into effect after this season no longer requires unanimity to among the 10 conferences in Notre Dame to make rule changes. It's set up in a way that essentially the folks at the top can sort of do what they want, can construct this thing in a way that they want to do it. It doesn't need full agreement. And I think the problem for the Big 12 and the ACC is a little bit of as you said, what are we going to do about it? What can we do about this? they also just lived through a season in which the ACC had to get a little lucky to get 2 in, and the Big 12 only got 1 in. And we can argue all day that wasn't fair, but I think the reality is they see a situation where, hey, if we can guarantee ourselves 2, I mean, if you're the Big 12, that's double what you had this past year. Again, I understand the drawbacks to it. I understand the idea of not playing your way into the bracket, right? Or making it feel like you're not earning it. You're just being handed something and you're not asking those conferences and those teams to earn it. But I also, the reality of having just seen this thing play out, and you realize that maybe it might be tough for the Big 12 to get more than 2 in most years. Locking in 2 might not be the best idea. I think the fact of the matter is, if they broke off and decided, no, we don't want to be part of this playoff, we're going to go do our own thing, and you didn't have the SEC and the Big Ten driving the value of it, what are you accomplishing then?
Do you think Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips is the ACC commissioner, but this seems like it's against what we think or what we've learned Brett Yormark is as a fighter, as an inner city, New York City guy that's a fighter. This doesn't seem like something he would do.
Yeah, I don't know how much you can fight. You can fight it.
Yeah.
I don't know if the system is built in a way you can express your dismay. You can say, I don't like this. But if the Big 12 wanted to pull out of the playoff, I mean, I don't think that would be good for college football. But I do think the SEC and the Big 10 would be like, okay, you can go and what are you going to do without us? And what are you going to do about it? And I hate that it's come to that, because you wish it would be more collegial and you wish you would be thinking more along the lines of serving the greater good. And I think there are folks in the SEC and the Big Ten who would say, no, this is serving the greater good. We are thinking about sort of the greater good. But I can also understand if I'm sitting in Big 12 country or ACC country thinking that's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
That is ridiculous. I just don't know what the fight is here or how to fight back when the most valuable to and strongest and wealthiest and the leagues with all the power are sort of exerting that power. What can you do to push back? Yeah,
and if you're the Big 12 or ACC and you still may not be happy with 2 because others are getting 4, are you fighting for the group of 5 actually behind the scene? Because they're getting 1. It's like poor, pitiful us, but are you fighting for others who aren't getting much either?
No, and you're probably not, right? You're probably fighting to say, well, why don't we go to 16 teams? And that gives us 3 extra at-large spots, and that gives us more possibility, or 2 or 3. The math is like eluding me now. But if you go to 14 and you have your 2, it frees up more possible at-large spots, and you're thinking, well, I'll get my team an extra team or 2 in through that way, like through the at-large field. So I think what you're doing is not necessarily right. And that's the other problem too. Like, it's hard to just sort of like, to think of others in this situation, right? Like, if I'm the Big 12 and the ACC, I might find myself going, well, should the G5 even have a spot? Maybe we could open that as another at-large spot.
Ralph, so I mean, the where I get kind of confused about automatic qualifiers, though, is also, again, it is sports, and so some years you're not going to have that many. So won't there be pushback from the viewers where, look, the Big Ten has had many years where it's been Ohio State and everyone else?
Right. So I think the way you're lining some of this up is the other way I think that I could frame this to you guys is think of the idea that championship weekend becomes the first round of the playoffs. Because I think it's not just reimagining the playoff itself, right? The one that starts after championship weekend. It's this idea that if you're going to come up with 4 teams that come out of the Big Ten or 4 teams that come out of the SEC, what you would then be doing is turning your championship weekend into not one game, but several play-in games. There's a couple of different iterations of this. The one that's been most popular, that's been sort of floating around the Big Ten, is 1 in the standings plays 2 in the standings, and the winner is the champion. The winner most likely gets a bye. And the loser goes back into having to play sooner and get back into the field. And then you'd have a 3 versus, I'm going to make sure I get the math right here, 3 versus 6 game in the standings, and the winner just gets into the field. But no seed guaranteed, just gets into the field. And you'd have a 4-5 game where the winner gets into the field. Now, I've even heard some idea of, hell, why don't we have a 1 versus 8 game? Yes, the first place team would have to play another game to get into the field. And if it loses, you have a Cinderella and you'd be out. Now, again, that's a little extreme. I'm not sure how many coaches are going to sign up for finishing first in the SEC or Big Ten standings and then still having to play another game to get into the playoff. But the idea of creating something of a mini tournament on championship weekend where you have these high stakes playoff games to get into the main bracket, what you're essentially doing then is creating another round of playoffs, right? Another round of winner go home games.
Ralph Russo, theathletic.com, with us on 365 Sports. So the next time they meet, Ralph, is like 8 days from now. On the 25th, is that right, or is that just kind of what?
No. The college football playoff meetings, yes, are about a week out. I believe they're in person. It's funny when people say in person, sometimes that can mean in person via computer. But I believe they might be meeting together in Dallas next week. What's happening this week, starting at tomorrow and Wednesday, is SEC and Big Ten meetings in New Orleans, including one where the 2 leagues are going to meet together on Wednesday.
Yeah, so they can get their ducks in a row as if they don't already have it. But that just that's
essentially it, right?
Yeah.
They have to get on the same page to a certain degree, and I think there's some question of whether they are. I think that the Big Ten had been a little more on board with the idea of some of these automatic bids and playoff games or play-in games, and I think the SEC is sort of warming up to this idea. But ultimately, those 2 conferences need to get, as you said, their ducks in a row. They need to get aligned on where they stand on this stuff and provide a united front going into those meetings next week.
Pernetti, with the Big Ten, doesn't come out with what appear to be almost dictatorship type comments that Sankey does. Does Sankey get thrown under the bus a little bit more because of what he says, and the Big Ten is just as guilty here, if guilty is the right word?
Yeah. Tony Petitti likes to operate sort of outside the spotlight more than Greg Sankey. Now, listen, I think Greg would tell you he doesn't necessarily want to operate in the spotlight, but Greg has been leading the most powerful conference in terms of on the field product for a while. He has been part of the college sports ecosystem for a while as a person who's been a leader and very much out front in NCAA issues, right? He has just been the face of college sports for a long time. So it's a little harder, I think, for Greg to avoid the cameras and avoid the reporters. I think he's tried to be a little more of laying low, but I just think it's harder for him because he is involved in a lot of stuff. Petitti comes from outside college sports. He was working in baseball. He certainly had experience in college sports before, and he just prefers to operate a little under the radar. And yes, I would agree with that comment. Well, Greg, I think because he has a tendency to be quoted a lot, is easily made sort of the face of villainry here. of all this expansion and stop messing with the NCAA tournament, stop messing with the CFP. But I think behind the scenes, they are working together and, again, want to be aligned as conferences. So if you're upset with Greg Sankey, you should probably be upset with Tony Petitti as well.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it, Ralph. Busy day as always. It's as he said, the Big Ten and also the SEC will have their meetings the next couple of days. And then, of course, the 25th is when there'll be the next time that people sit down and visit about the college football playoff. And whether any decisions are made by then may be presented in, like, this is what we want together, the two big conferences moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to get a couple different perspectives there. And, I don't want everything to be like life or death, like, oh, my God, this is – but, this is just more of the kind of conversation you were hoping wouldn't quite be, I guess, as front and center as it is already this offseason if you're the Big 12 fans or the ACC fans for that matter as well. But it shouldn't be a surprising conversation in the slightest. And I've seen, some people on the Big 10 side of things who are, trying to kind of posit the other side of things. But when you really look at the grand scheme of, like, yes, these teams make the most money and they draw the biggest eyeballs. And so I don't think anybody's arguing that you shouldn't have some advantage.
Right.
That's not what anybody's saying. But people can't have truthful back and forth anymore. They got to straw man some S.
Yeah.
So it's not as though the ACC fans like we deserve 4-2. It's like, no, we just don't think that like you should have half the field before there's even a snap drawn.
Just don't lock it in.
Yeah,
like that's the thing is you'll probably get it. Like that's the thing. That's where I agree with Dan maybe more than Ralph is that most years they'll probably in 16-team format. Because that would probably be what they have to do. In a 16-team format, those two are going to have half the field no matter what.
Yeah.
Almost every year, no matter what, it's going to happen. If we did that for 30 years, there might be 5 where they tripped on their own, and didn't do it. So we're doing this for how much of the population of
exactly
things?
That's the thing.
Like how much you're trying to solve a problem, and this happens a lot in this world. You're making a problem bigger than it is by saying like we got to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Well, it hardly happens in the first place. So what are you doing?
I also like the part that I've seen, and I saw it from Bud Elliott of, he does this blue chip ratio thing. That's his own little, however many blue chips you recruited, you have a chance to win the national title or you don't. And seeing him basically call the Big 12 a G5 for all intents and purposes. I mean, he didn't say they're closer to that than they are to the top. I don't know that I agree with that, but I guess the point being that they're not in the same ball club and so on and so forth. But in using this blue chip ratio as far as like who can win national titles and who can't, I think the whole then why even put Arizona State in the field? Let's just use these metrics. And so Arizona State, we saw them actually get a chance and nearly beat Texas, if not for a very controversial call. But the ratio would have told me that they had absolutely no shot whatsoever to be in that game. So I don't know about you guys. I don't watch for the actual teams. Yeah. I don't watch for actual teams to play and actually put their heart and soul out there. I watch for what the computer says. That's where I feel like we're kind of heading more than anything is the formula says, the TV ratings say, the money figure says, and it's like, I just want to watch kids go out there and try to upset the other team. When did we lose that? When did we lose track of
what is the the thing is, what does the football say? The only thing you need to ask is the football.
Well, let me ask you a question. When the game's go ahead.
Let me finish my thought, please. Right. So I understand what the ratio says, but I still want to see Arizona State have a chance to go and see if they can upset that. And you know what? It's also a lot easier now to have a very lopsided ratio. And I know historically it pans out the same way of where most of the best players, 5 stars, high-end 4-star blue chips, they play in those 2 leagues. Mm-hmm. Especially now with, 6 mega well, I'm not going to count UCLA, but 5 mega recruiting brands all shift to those leagues in the last year. So, yeah, there's going to be more of a shift there. But I'll tell you what also doesn't help that. We're in an era of NIL. So when one school, just by merely existing, is making, I don't know the exact figures, but $40 million more than the other school, yeah, they probably have more blue chips. in the era of NIL when you just pay players to come play for you, because it is absolutely pay for play. So, I mean, I understand the point, but I also think that there's these built-in advantages that were earned in some cases, but it's like, so you're already $50 million behind. Now we want to screw you out of even having like multiple opportunities. So, yeah, I doubt that any of those schools ever have a chance to run the table or win anything, because what narrow little window they have, you're trying to shut that on them as well. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I think we all understand there's like 5 teams every year, maybe 10 that can actually win a national title. That's been the case pretty much for forever. I don't think that's much different now.
It comes and goes with 1 or 2
yeah.
in, 2 in, 1 or 2 out. Yeah.
But let's just start there and not worry about anybody. I don't know, man. I think some of this, like kind of like Dan was talking about, of the everything's national championship or bust. And it's like, that's not the way it's supposed to be. And most teams know they're not going to play for a national championship. But so now just because you don't think they can win that, like now let's limit their opportunities to even have a chance to even play for it.
That's the part.
And that's where I'm like, why would you root for that? Because you have to be, what's the right word? Stimulated constantly with big numbers in the ranking portions of the graphic to care. Like, that's, I don't know, man. I know the majority is what's going to win, and the majority of people watch those leagues, but the access part and that part of it, I just don't understand why you would root against that. So I don't know. I think there's college football fans talking, and then I think there's fans of certain leagues talking, and you're never going to get everybody to agree on everything.
Like I read the quote earlier, and we have Keaton Thomas, Baylor linebacker, and just around the corner. But it's almost exhausting that there's never or rarely is there an off season where you just know what's going to happen. You just kind of rinse and repeat. Maybe that makes it keeps it from becoming boring. All right, Keaton Thomas, Baylor linebacker. Pat Smith, 3-man front, will join us, give us the SEC perspective. That's who he covers out of that monster radio station, WJOX in Birmingham. Also today, among the Big 12 football schedules, we've been through 3, Arizona State, Baylor. We dig into BYU and Paul's top 5, and this is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for great customer service, great work on your vehicle, and also great offerings. And that includes right now a time to love your truck and SUV during the Love Your Truck Savings Event. Just had Valentine's Day, and in the mood of that, the Love Your Truck Savings Event going on right now. All 2024 cars and trucks are priced to move. You can save $9,000 on all 2024 Sierra, SLT, and SLE models in stock as a part of the Love Your Truck Savings Event going on right now. They've got various other offerings as well, but again, $9,000 on all 2024 Sierra, SLT, and SLE models in stock. And Richard Carr's got plenty of other options when it comes to the Buicks and other GMCs, so on and so forth, but there's just one of many during this event. They're locally owned, locally run, and they've been part of the community in Central Texas for over 40 years. Do business in Waco with a dealership that gives back to the community, and deal with people you can count on at Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
To
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student-athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student-athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student-athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
We're expecting Baylor linebacker Keaton Thomas at about this time, but he's in a meeting still, and so we might be running either late with that or might be pushing it back into the 5 o'clock hour. Hopefully one of those two, Pat Smith, three-man front, will join us from WJOX and three-man front in Birmingham, Alabama. A couple of other stories today in college football. Thank you, by the way, for your time. If you haven't, hit the like and subscribe button if you want. We would appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed or you have, please tell somebody else about what we do every afternoon. Former Tulsa head coach. He has been at Auburn and also has been a part of one of those spring leagues with the Birmingham Stallions. Former Baylor offensive coordinator Philip Montgomery is joining Virginia Tech as their offensive coordinator. And I just saw this stat. I copied and pasted it. Virginia Tech has never, ever had an offense average over 450 yards per game in a season. Never, ever, ever. That's one of the guys who covers Auburn. Philip Montgomery has 6 years under his belt where his offense averaged over 500 yards per game. And, of course, 1 year at Baylor over 600 yards per game.
That's not even with Michael Vick in their run to being a runner-up in the national championship game. But also, like, maybe not totally fair to Frank Beamer, the greatest coach in their history.
Yeah, different stuff.
Like, yeah, you don't need 450 yards when you block a punt and a field goal in the same game, or, you have a punt return to the 7-yard line every week, something like that they would do. So Beamer ball was a little bit different. But even still, in the modern era of college football, since Frank Beamer's left Virginia Tech, they've been rudderless on offense. Kyron Drones comes back, a guy who he was also here at Baylor, who has a ton of athletic ability as a runner and a passer, and probably needs to be in that kind of system, and probably doesn't have to have much of a learning curve to learn the concepts, considering he's from Texas and played against those systems and in those systems his entire high school career.
Yeah, good for Philip Montgomery. Happy for him to have a gig again. Was out of the game last year, so he's back at a place where they like to win, and there's a lot of big-time opponents, and he's got a big-time quarterback in Kyron Drones and a little bit of talent to work with there, to say the least. So, good luck to Monty, and I think you're in a situation there at Va Tech where, you need to win some ball games, but, I don't know how unique and rare his offense is now at this point, but I'm interested to see how he's changed, tweaked, evolved, or just kind of reset after a year away. Not that he was probably away from the game entirely, but, in terms of being in an official capacity since he left Auburn, and that was a short, very forgettable stint in 2023. So, I'm sure he's raring to go and ready to prove himself once again, and curious to see kind of how all that works up there in Blacksburg.
Before we go, we'll do Marcus Sedbury, excuse me. He has been promoted to the general manager position at Wisconsin. This guy's on a fast rise up the top. He's been at Nebraska. He was at Baylor. He now becomes their new general manager. Congratulations. Love Marcus Sedbury. Got a chance to get to know him a little bit. And congratulations for him being a part of that job with one of the biggest schools in America, in Wisconsin.
And look, Wisconsin, Luke Fickell hasn't hit his stride yet, hasn't found his quarterback, but now that's kind of on Marcus Sedbury to go and do to help him do that and run the business side of all this stuff. A rising star. I knew that the first time I met him. It's like, this guy's going places. I remember meeting Marcus and be like, oh, he'll be here for a couple years. And then as soon as he's gonna just go up the ladder. A really smart, savvy guy, and happy for him, and good luck to the Badgers. Finally finding that recipe they need under Luke Fickell to get it right.
So there's that. Congratulations to Marcus as he continues to rise up the charts, as we mentioned. I had this story on Friday's show about YouTube TV. And Paramount Plus and CBS, they did reach an agreement over the weekend.
Oh, imagine that.
Yeah, got a little bit hot and bothered over that. We had Bob Thompson on Friday's show, but in fact, now I'm sure that those of you like me, if you're someone who subscribes to YouTube TV, then you're probably going to feel it, but that's also business the way it is. But they did work it out after a couple of days of, oh, my God. March Madness around the corner, and also
I think there's a lot
the Masters.
The oh my God stuff that happens with stories like this, and just kind of in general stories that we see of like, let's create this panic and this fervor with the deadline's approaching, and then of course it gets solved right before the deadline. It's like clockwork.
Barstool Sports also helped amplify this quite a bit.
Oh, imagine that! It's kind of like the random New Orleans run-in between Pat Mahomes and John Rocker. That was they just happened to oh, check out this, and then it turns out they're promoting a fight. Yeah. Weird.
Yeah. So it's just but it's what they do, and okay, I know that if you have YouTube TV and you had the Paramount channels and you don't have them for a little while, I mean, it's not hard to buy a movie ticket and get 4 months of Paramount Plus for free. They have more. They're like the Papa John's of streaming services, where they have so much that they're tied into that you can get one for sending a text.
Yeah, but isn't it supposed to be easier than that?
It is, but it also wasn't there's no way for you to watch it. It's not like cable used to be, where if your cable company that was contracted to your area and there was no competition, which that used to be like that, where you didn't have competition, this is a Time Warner area, this is a Verizon area, whatever, they used to have that. If they got in a fight with Paramount and took it off, then you were screwed. We saw it with Fox and the NFL here a couple years ago with the Nexstar stations. We had an Nexstar Fox station. We were screwed for a little while when it came to Fox, a couple months. But when it comes to the NCAA tournament, if that's specifically what you're worried about watching, or watching anything that comes on CBS aside from your local programming that would come on there, you can just get Paramount Plus for free for a couple months, set an alarm in your phone to cancel it, and watch the tournament and the Masters.
Well, I had a phone conversation with a guy. I have Spectrum cable. I had, I have YouTube TV and Spectrum cable. So the money is not the issue, at least for me now. I'm still trying to figure this out. I'm on the phone with this guy, and I tell him that they went from what was, again, my internet and cable went from, what was it, $268 a month to $278 a month. And then this past weekend, I get a statement that it's $290 a month. And so I got on the phone with him. I start telling him, man, this is not going to happen anymore. This is what it was. You do this every year. You give me kind of a $15 break, and then 5 or 6, 8 months later, you raise it back up again without any notice at all, even though they'll send you.
Well, they do it $2 at a time.
Yes.
Some places.
So
It's every 4 months, it's another $2.
$278, and I should have noticed it then. And then it was $290, which I'm thinking, okay. You know what the guy told me? You don't need to be doing cable. This is a guy that's a customer service rep for the cable company.
I'm very puzzled as to why you have both and why you're spending that much money. For a guy who's self-proclaimed, I don't watch any TV, you're paying more for TV than I do.
Well, that's what I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask you, the audience, because these two guys here, they're going to get into the age jokes. But
No, I'm just saying it doesn't make any
sense. What am I going to lose if I get? I can do internet, which is like what, $90 a month or whatever it is for 400 megabit, whatever it's called. What am I going to lose if I go with just YouTube TV? Because I don't know if I watch anything other than that. Yeah,
nothing. Smokey, Spectrum's not giving you anything that YouTube TV can't, or Hulu, or whoever you want to go with. Nothing. Like you might lose the Lifetime movie channel that you don't watch. Again, you're watching sports and Yellowstone. Like that's the things I know that you watch. You're okay on YouTube TV.
Okay. All right. Then I'm going to cancel Spectrum cable tonight. Well, it won't be tonight because I have the basketball game. Here's a comment on the chat room from Steele Austin. That's a name that's backwards. It's kind of like, what's the guy from Utah? Sylvester Stevenson Sylvester. Why don't Yormark and Phillips start working together on plans for their own Tier 2 of college football? Why wait? No.
Because no one will care.
Yeah, because then I
mean, I hate to say it that way when we're sitting here talking about how, like, these leagues deserve their fair shot in that, but what I mean by that is there will be people that care, but not enough to float some big competition towards the others. Like, you're not going to hinder them really in any way in terms of the football side. Now, as Ralph pointed out, like the basketball thing's a different piece, and that's something that where they kind of do need each other a little bit more, even though the SEC's having their golden era maybe right now in basketball. But I just don't think you're really threatening anybody by breaking off. And what TV networks are you going to be on?
Well,
so you're going to piss all over SEC and ESPN, and then they're just going to be like, yeah, we'll give you more than we're already giving you to.
You're actually going to give them a reason to give more money to the other ones.
Yeah, exactly. So like that's the thing.
This hard to get to this point.
And there's really not a lot of options because the Big Ten has like everybody that they're tied into. I mean, it's what Fox, CBS, NBC,
everybody but ESPN.
Yeah, and then ESPN's all SEC. So where are you going? And before you say Turner, I sure hope that you actually know the Turner story, and I'm not talking to you specifically, Austin, but I've seen some of this, like the Turner and the Big 12. It's like, do y'all realize what that was? That was ESPN Plus games being offloaded onto Turner.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. That's all that was. That wasn't some big new rights agreement. That wasn't a promise that you're going to sign a multi-billion-dollar contract in 5 years. That was the start of a relationship that you fingers and toes crossed hope turns into something else. I don't think Turner's really working with all that much money, even with the NBA falling off their schedule. They had to replace it with something, so they're replacing that in part by using some of the Big 12 content that otherwise would have been on ESPN+, but they're not in any way like shaping up to be some like competitor to ESPN in college football or anything along those lines, and it's not even like new stuff. It's stuff that was already worked into ESPN+. So I mentioned that just to say that this wasn't some brand new mega deal that's like some epiphany and big thing that Yormark orchestrated. It's a nice little side deal that'll get you a little bit more exposure, but it's not an answer for, hey, let's leave ESPN and let's leave Fox and let's go do our own. That's not going to work. So that's why to answer your question. Hopefully that makes sense.
The old barn cat, go K-State. Man, we love you. I know you're a K-State fan. No one would care. I think alumni would care.
I think I just explained that.
Yeah, no, you would then be irrelevant.
Yeah,
I mean, you're in a pretty good spot.
No one with the money would care.
It was just a figure of speech. Yes, I know that you would care. I understand that. We've talked more Big 12 than anybody. I mean, I get that. But my point is that if you were to do that, I don't think the nation's suddenly going, oh, Jesus, let's shut it all down. I don't think that that's an option that you have that's all that realistic. But I know that's not really what people dabble in these days. So
I disagree. Well, okay. Then it's like staring down a barrel of a shot.
I don't even know what we're disagreeing on.
The money people would not care.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
would do it. And when you like TNT also, okay, so they made the bid for the NBA. They didn't get that. Okay, they lost it. They have now licensed inside the NBA over to ESPN, so they're going to make money on that. But they're also not going to take the money that they saved, the money they were spending on the NBA, and pour it into everything else. So it's not like that NBA money is just sitting there waiting to go into the Big 12. It's not. Like that's
not the only one they're even working with.
Exactly.
That's not the only conference. Yeah, my point is just that ESPN's not going to do anything for you solely to try and combat their cash cow. NBC's not. CBS isn't. ABC's obviously ESPN, Disney. So my point is, like, your only option really that you're tied into, that you have a current agreement with, is Turner, and I don't think that you have the opportunity to go take all of your stuff over there, for one, and for two, it's not going to add up to be more than what you're doing right now and somehow make you more competitive. So, yeah, I don't think there's like some big, well, you do this or we walk away, and that's probably why they haven't done it. It's because there's not really that threat out there to force the others to cave to whatever demand you might have or whatever you want to try and change. So, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that makes sense, Barncat. If not, I don't know.
CBS is still a viable option. You would be dead in the water, and he goes, no, you'd be dead in the water like a coral snake sucking on your finger. Gone.
Okay, so there's 2 games a week?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
So there's 2 games a week.
I mean, you could be the most proud K-State alum fan and donor, and maybe former player ever, that doesn't beat business. That doesn't mean because that's how you feel.
I'm going to go back to the corporate titans that are running our country. Yeah. We are all just, like I said on the triple option earlier today, I don't know if you weren't watching it, but I'll use this example. Smoak, you won't get it because you've not seen The Matrix. We are just fuel for the machines, man.
Oh, yeah,
That's what we are. We're in a tank, and we're fuel for the machines. And then when they're done with us, they spit us out down the tube of goo, and that's it.
We're consumers.
Yeah, that's
We're
it.
consumers.
We're just there. So, that's all. We're just numbers on a page.
Steel Austin, they're going to have to deal with this in 2031 anyway. If they get the best deal, they can now get a tier 2. You don't want to be tier 2. You might be forced to be tier 2 at some point. But right now, remember how hard and how long the Big 12 fought during some of the college football realignment to get the money they're getting now? Then why give that up? Why give that up? You fought for that. You're still getting a lot less than the Big Ten and also the SEC. The last thing you want to do is just walk away from the money that you're getting now.
That's calling the bluff, basically, is what you'd be doing. And you're kind of, in so many ways, already tier 2. I mean, you're tier 2 in terms of the discussion we've had from the beginning of the show today, because you're not involved in that conversation. But in other areas, you're still a part of the Power 4. So you do have that. You do have, say, in basketball, you do have some tools in your chest, but you are by no means calling the shots, and I don't think you're in a position right now where you can go say, like, screw ESPN and screw Fox. We're going to go do what? I mean, because you're not going to have – I mean, you think there's complaints about ESPN Plus. Where are all the basketball games going to go? Where's all the baseball? We're going to watch that on the Turner app? Yeah. That's my point. Is like there's not a viable option right now. If you had one, if there was some real competitor that had something in mind where they really wanted to go and pour and invest that level of money to make you competitive alongside them, as ESPN has done with their television deals with the SEC. Like, they've made them as formidable as anybody with how much they've paid them, right? And that comes off of their ratings and the formulas and all of that. If somebody was willing to do that, then that'd be great. But that somebody's not out there, and it's not going to be Turner Sports. They're not going to go pay SEC money for
or Big 12 money,
or Big 12 money, probably. Yeah. So I don't think that's viable. I don't think that's realistic. And so because of that, I don't know that you have an option to go, all right, well, we're going to take our ball and leave. Where are you going? I don't know that you have anywhere to go.
Yeah, you'd go from whatever that is, 30, 35, 40 million. I don't know what it is. I know it kind of to making what they're making now with the Pac-12 combination of the Mountain West and whoever else is going to be a part of that conference. They're scratching and clawing for that. Be proactive, yes. I agree with you. But not right now. 2031, can you be proactive? Yeah, that's 6 years from now. And we'll see how all that works out. We'll see what happens, first of all, with the expansion of the college football playoff and where the Big 12, the ACC, the group of fives and others are, when and if, and it will be when that becomes official.
Yeah, appreciate your comments, Barncat, and anybody else, and definitely understand where you're coming from. Also, just being realistic about the situation. We'd love for your mark. I mean, that's what we've had the conversation about. Yeah, call the bluff, but, I mean, you got to know what you're holding is pretty good, or you better have a good backup plan, and I don't know if they've got that in place right now. Certainly not with a TV deal in hand that they could afford to go, all right, we're walking away like we said, so I'll put it this way. A lot can change in a very short amount of time, as we've seen. So who the hell knows what 6 years from now looks like in college athletics? I mean, there might be an answer out there in the next year or two. There might not be an answer. It might just be what it is. But things can change very quickly, so we'll see what happens here in the foreseeable future.
What's the alternative option in 2031? Why not be proactive before the breakaway? Steele, excuse me. It's going to be hard for me to say Steele, Austin. Thanks for your feedback. We appreciate it. Coming up next, Pat Smith, WJOX three-man front out of Birmingham. Just got a note from Baylor Athletics. Keaton Thomas is still in a meeting. Not sure if we'll have him on today or not, but we got plenty to talk about, including with Pat Smith. And then a look at BYU, their football schedule in 2025. And this is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco. And let me tell you something. Ted Teague, the general manager there, he watches us all of the time. And we appreciate Ted because of what he does and also the fact that they are always there when you want Ram trucks or anything Jeep. The Wagoneer, of course, amazing. The Grand Cherokee and different levels of Grand Cherokee, too. And they have SUVs. And it's a parking lot that always has inventory. Of course, January is done. The start of the year, we're already, past the halfway mark in February, too. And Alan Samuels has great deals and opportunities for you. And I'm going to get to that in just a second when I find exactly what I was looking for here, which is what I have right now. The value spots. Ram Truck Month. They could do Ram Truck Month every month, and basically they do because 7 times Ram trucks have been honored with, Motor Trend Truck of the Year. 7 times, including most recently. The Wagoneer, the Jeep Wagoneer. I don't know if you've ever driven one. I've actually had one as a rental car one time. They upgraded me, and I didn't even ask for it. It is phenomenal. And, of course, it handles so well. Bold and big, and maneuverability is amazing. And all the amenities and the screens, plus the Jeep Grand Cherokees are fantastic, too. Ted Teague, David Gray is the new car sales manager, general sales manager there, and a staff waiting to get you in the car, truck, or SUV you want at Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Alan Samuels House of Travel is a full-service travel agency with highly experienced travel consultants plus support staff with over a combined 150 years in the travel business. They are ready to take care of any travel situation for you, your family, and your business, and with the kind of knowledge to complete a seamless itinerary trip start to finish. They will search for the best deal to accommodate your budget from air to cars, ship to shore, hotel, and even meeting space. Name a destination and they've been there. They know the places to go, and international and missionary travel is one of their unique specialties. Alan Samuels House of Travel, celebrating 50 years in business. Call Connie, Sherry, Linda, or Bambi at 254-776-2560 or find them on Facebook or at houseoftravelwaco.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Alan Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Pat Smith, great friend of the show, co-host, three-man front. Also, WJOX monster station in Birmingham covers most of all of what they do, if not everything in the SEC. Joins us Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, David Smoak on 365 Sports. So, Pat, obviously the story that Ross Dellinger had yesterday evening is not new. Everyone knows that the college football playoff is going to expand. Everyone knows there will be automatic qualifiers, but that doesn't mean you just lay down and let somebody run over you. From the SEC perspective, what's been the reaction to Ross's story today? Is it like, yeah, that's what we earn, that's who we are, and so what's the problem?
First off, guys, it's always great to be on. And from an SEC perspective, the fans were like, you know what? We're all for it. This is the way it should be. If you read deep into Ross's article, obviously he brings up some really good points from a numeric standpoint over the last 11 years when it comes to the college football playoff, what the SEC and the Big Ten has done if you were to have a 14 or a 16-team playoff throughout history. And the SEC believes that they should be given those 4 guaranteed marks for the automatic qualifiers moving forward. The fans believe, you know what? Most of America wants to see the Big Ten and the SEC, and so it's time for them to flex their muscles. They don't believe that they should be propping up a conference like the ACC. They want to move forward with this plan, and I think this week in New Orleans, as Ross pointed out, I think both the Big Ten and the SEC are going to come a little bit closer to that recommendation that's going to happen late February in regards to the College Football Playoff Management Committee.
Counterpoint, Pat. The last 11 years don't mean anything, considering that in 8 of them, there was not NIL in the transfer portal.
That is correct. I cannot argue that point. Very well said. Yes, it is a changing landscape. But as we all know, as Brett Yormark, he is hired by the presidents and chancellors of the Big 12. He's going to do what's best for his conference. Greg Sankey, he's going to do what's best for the SEC. Tony Petitti, same thing for the Big Ten. So when it's all said and done, the SEC, based on their historical success and the dominance when it comes to the college football playoff, their presidents and chancellors didn't like what they saw this last year. Listen, they've been on this path for change for a number of years. Matter of fact, as we all know, because it's in y'all's backyard, Bowlesby and Sankey, they both directly, they were architects of something that nobody could get on the same page about in the years before. So now the SEC is going to have to really pretty much take the reins by their hands, and they've got a drafting partner now with Tony Petitti, and with both of those conferences ballooning and having the likes of ESPN and Fox behind them, I really firmly believe that moving forward, they are going to flex their muscles. And I know the rest of college football is not going to like what they hear or see, but I think that's the path we're on.
So, Pat, in line with that, I know there's always been the talk about the Super League, and especially the last 2 or 3 years, and everybody's got different versions. Like, for me, it's not just like these 2 conferences come together and they're the Super League. Like, to me, there's got to be some shedding of dead weight, for lack of a better term. But regardless, that's a different topic. What is the end goal here, do you think? Because I think a lot of people, like we had Dan Wetzel on, are just puzzled of like, okay, so you get more spots and more access and more money than you already had, and you've already got gobs and gobs more than everybody. So it's like, when are they just satisfied? If that makes sense as a question.
No, listen. I mean, that's a great question, and I think until this House settlement becomes 100%, locked in and it's law, and you're moving forward. Now we've got questions about what is, obviously Title IX has to do with all of this from a federal government standpoint. But from the SEC standpoint, they look at it this way. Them and the Big Ten, they generate the most amount of money. You take a look at the historic aspect of the TV eyeballs that watch football games each and every week, and it's the SEC and the Big Ten. And so they get paid royally and handsomely by ESPN and Fox for that. But at the end of the day, they've got every single member of their conference wanting even more money so they can help justify paying the means of those non-revenue producing sports if you want to continue to have a softball program or a diving team or a rowing team or whatever the case may be. So the SEC and the Big Ten are absolutely going for a money grab here. And like I said, I know it's not going to sit well with the Big 12 or the ACC, but this juncture in time, it's a dog-eat-dog world. And I don't think Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti are too concerned with it.
You mentioned something about Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti, these conference commissioners doing what's best for each conference, and that is their job. But when does that tilt when they've stuffed it too much and they wind up ruining the whole thing? Is there any consideration about that?
I think Greg Sankey, I can only speak for Greg Sankey. I'm not speaking for Greg Sankey, but knowing Greg Sankey and obviously living in the same town and covering him and interviewing him, things of that nature, Greg Sankey absolutely cares about the sport. Greg Sankey absolutely cares about intercollegiate athletics. It's not just a strict money grab. But I go back to what I said at the beginning of this interview. Greg Sankey is hired and he works at the pleasure of the presidents and the chancellors of these universities. And at the end of the day, they have a budget and a balance sheet. And if that budget or balance sheet is not meeting the requirements, or they're having issues with their alumni that's giving that money that helps their university or college, whatever the case may be, then that's going to fall back upon the commissioner in which they hire and fire. So it's no different than Roger Goodell working for the owners or anybody else that calls themselves a commissioner. They work at the pleasure of everyone else. And at the end of the day, I think he would love to be able to work something out. But let's just be honest. But listen, I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, where we are a rock's throw from an American Athletic Conference team. We've got Sun Belt teams. We've got Conference USA teams. And obviously we're wedged in between Alabama and Auburn in the SEC. SEC offices here in Birmingham. But at the end of the day, those other conferences are probably going to have to be like brought down to the level of back in the old days. Of course, your listeners might not remember the 1AA or the Division II likes. That's probably what's going to have to happen. You're going to have your Power Four leagues, and then you're going to have everybody else. And I believe firmly that this conversation that the Big Ten and the SEC is having is leading us down that path. It's the first step of many that it's going to have to take by 2026 possibly to make this all happen.
Do you feel like if there is some sort of the Super League, breakaway, whatever, that they could do it with just the two major conferences that are the ones who make the most money, or is that dangerous?
I think it's dangerous, but I also think that when they get into a room, and listen, we all know that right now nothing is going to happen for the 2025 college football playoff because there's no way that you're going to get a unanimous decision. That's just not going to happen in 2025. But since everyone else has ceded control in 2026 to the SEC and the Big Ten, I think they would love to be able to play fair with everybody. And I think that's why you're seeing Ross's story being floated out there to like, okay, look, here we've got the data. So if the Big 12 and the ACC, if they've got a problem with their two automatic, then you guys show us proof or data that would suggest that you deserve more than what you are potentially getting. I think that's where Petitti and Greg Sankey are right now in regards to their presentation moving forward.
Okay, but do the Eagles get in the playoffs next year because they won the Super Bowl 2 weekends ago?
No, once again, I agree with that premise. I'm just telling you from the aspect of the SEC, they do not believe that this should be a government subsidy type situation in which they're going to fund every other league in college football. The SEC is technically right now behind the Big Ten in regards to the amount of money that they're getting per school. Listen, guys, there's a reason why Clemson and Florida State is suing the ACC. There's a reason why they have a $30 million shortfall from the lowest level team in the SEC. So at the end of the day, it is going to be a dog-eat-dog world. It is not fair. Listen, I wish we could go back and have college football the way it was before the pandemic and before NIL, but I think we all know those days are long gone.
Yeah, I thought those were dead for a long time. I keep trying to pop the bubble. I don't like doing it, Pat, but people are like, but what about fairness? And it's like, do you realize what world we're living in right now? Like, I don't think that's a consideration. And that's unfortunate. It really is, but it's also reality. So I think the reason we really wanted to talk to you today, a large part of it at least, was not necessarily related to this, but the big basketball game over the weekend, the highly touted number 1, number 2 Alabama-Auburn matchup. And, Auburn with a big-time win, taking down the number 2 Tide in Tuscaloosa. Your thoughts on just the build-up and the action itself, and did it live up to the hype, and what did the result say to you, if anything?
Well, listen, one thing's for sure. Both Alabama and Auburn football programs, those fan bases pivoted pretty quickly to the basketball programs because those two have just been outstanding to cover. Listen, it lived up to the hype. One thing is for sure, those 14 quad one wins that Auburn has on its resume, it's just incredible. I mean, they walked into Coleman Coliseum in front of 14,000 screaming Alabama fans, and they did everything to quiet that crowd, even with 7:49 left when Alabama came storming back and tied the game. All they did was keep the Tide from 2 of 13 shooting down the stretch. Janai Broome is the National Player of the Year. I know Cooper Flagg's going to get all the press and everything because he plays at Duke, but Janai Broome is playing about 70%, guys. He got banged up earlier in the season. He's still not 100%, but he goes for 19 and 14 against the second team in America. This Auburn team is deep. This Auburn team is dangerous. And we said it on our show today. It's Final Four or bust. With this type of team that he has, there is no reason. And if they can't get to San Antonio, this season has been a huge failure.
Pat, I'm kind of curious. Like the SEC had, like, Bruce Pearl is a very polarizing guy. You either love Bruce Pearl and you love it, or you think he's a bit of a jackass. Nate Oates isn't trying to make any friends at all, like at all. You know, Calipari. What do you think compared to like a conference like, say, the Big 12, which for the most part has like, you know, mostly the nice guy coaches, like the ones that are, you know, kind of more avuncular, but they've kind of embraced this villain role. And look, if Will Wade can get back in there, he's going to do it.
There's no doubt about it. And let's not forget Chris Beard sitting over there. I know he's in Oxford, Mississippi, but he's an interesting guy that you guys covered a good bit. Listen, what has happened to this conference is these schools have decided not only are they going crazy with NIL for basketball, but they're also paying their coaches just incredible amounts of money right now. It is. I have never seen this conference as deep with talent, not only the players, but also the coaching list. It is just unbelievable what's going on. But you're right about Bruce Pearl and Nate Oates. There's plenty of people that you either love them or you hate them, and that's what's so great for us in Birmingham to be able to cover these two guys because, I mean, it is like one day it's all over Bruce and the next day it's all over Nate Oates. So there's never short of material here in this state when it comes to those two.
You know, the SEC, we spent a lot of time early on talking to you about what happens with college football playoff, but my God, it's a battering ram in men's basketball, and that's not always been the case. And I saw the story that Alabama does not hire Nate Oates if Auburn doesn't hire Bruce Pearl. Is that true?
That's pretty much true. I mean, what they did, and Bruce Pearl, obviously, he came to Auburn. He was still under a show cause, and Auburn had to really talk him into coming. I mean, he came and he couldn't recruit for I think 4 or 5 months before he got to Auburn. But yeah, Alabama's basketball program had kind of been in a malaise, and they were looking for that next new hot coach. And once Bruce Pearl got down there, then all of a sudden it was like, oh boy, you know, we have got to do something here because the infectious energy that he has. And listen, Nate Oates has done a really good job recruiting, and obviously he got Alabama to the Final Four last year. This is a great rivalry between these two. You know, back in the old days, we had Wentz Sanderson and Sonny Smith at Auburn. Those two guys, those were fantastic rivals. But, man, what they have been able to do, Auburn going to the Final Four under Bruce Pearl, Nate Oates going to the Final Four last year, both teams now potentially – you know, knocking on the door of at least the Sweet 16, Elite 8, maybe Final Four. It's done nothing but elevate the level of basketball in the state of Alabama. It's a lot of fun finally coming to fruition.
Yeah, it is. You know, there's teams that they really can't afford. Like, for example, Texas is on fumes. However, they have enough quality wins, and damn, here they are. They get blown out at home by Alabama, but then they control, dictate, and beat Kentucky. And what are they, like 5-8 in the conference? But if you look at the projections, even at 5-8, now they got to win more games, that they might be NCAA tournament okay.
It's crazy. No, I mean, right now you've got 13 teams, according to Joe Lunardi, that is slated to go to the NCAA tournament. I remember covering this league. Honestly, we were fortunate, guys, if we got 3 to 4 teams, maybe. And then Mike Slive, God rest his soul, the former commissioner, he saw that there was a problem in the league, and they go hire Mike Tranghese from the old Big East days. He comes in, and they basically do a whole seminar on how they need to improve this conference from a basketball standpoint. because it was bad. I mean, it was really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so slowly but surely, the non-conference scheduling stepped up. You started getting better talent. Obviously, the NIL faction of that has helped out big time over the last couple of years, because that's the thing. Auburn his resume is so stupid and as in good that they could lose their next 3 or 4 or 5 games in a row. They could go to Nashville in the SEC basketball tournament and play probably their backups and their walk-ons, and it would not hurt them.
Yep.
I mean, the hay's really in the barn. Their resume is just so incredible at 14-2 in quad 1 wins. It's amazing.
And so I'm going to use that as an example for the schools that are not a part of the Big Ten and the SEC in football. Go try to make that happen. It's not going to be easy. Go, Arizona State doesn't play Texas just really, really tight and maybe wins the game, but win the game. Go win those games if you get the opportunity, because, again, the SEC in basketball used to be, okay, they're going to get 3 or 4 teams and everybody else came out of the ACC, the Big East, and the Big 12, et cetera. Just go win them. Auburn's 9-2 in the top 25. 9-2 against the top 25.
And it's crazy because when you mentioned it, Smokey, about like Texas, for example, when you take a look at today's net, and I could be wrong about this, but if you look at the quad 1 wins, you've got Auburn, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama. Those are your top 4 with the best records in quad 1. And you look at Alabama's schedule the rest of the way, every one of their opponents is a top 20 opponent, including having to go to Tennessee as a top 5 opponent. They got to go to Florida, a top 2 opponent. Not to mention they got to finish the season at Auburn. It's crazy because it's giving opportunities like a Texas, or heck, I even see Oklahoma is still currently, which blows my mind, that they're still in the conversation to get an NCAA tournament bid. All you got to do is finish maybe with 7-8 wins in conference play in the SEC, and you're going to get high consideration because of the fact that those net numbers and quad 1 numbers are so high.
Pat, you and I might have talked about this the last time I had you on when these guys were out of town, but basketball school was a legit taunt, an insult in the SEC pre-Tranghese, right?
Yep.
Like if you
no doubt.
If you chatted out basketball school, that was the you if you were the basketball school, you could walk out of a football stadium feeling an absolute dog crap.
Well, yeah, and the reason why is because of this. If you think about this, now again, Florida had its run with Billy Donovan, all right. But think about this: if you were so-called basketball school, historically, obviously it was Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
When has Kentucky ever won anything in football? So you'd make fun of them that way. And then obviously Arkansas came on board. Like once they got into the SEC, then Nolan Richardson, 40 minutes of hell, they had their success. But let's just be honest, Arkansas is not winning many national championships in football. So yeah, if you said that, then that was taking a direct shot, because in our league, if you're not a football heavy or you're not playing for potential national championships in football, you really are nothing when it comes to an athletic department. Although Arkansas won total, indoor track, and LSU had a bunch of success in baseball, whatever the case may be, but it was always about football. But yeah, if you were a success at basketball, you were nothing in anything else. And yeah, it was kind of a way to make fun of other schools in the conference. That's not the case now, guys. I mean, when you've got an NIL reportedly of about $6 to $7 million, that's what Alabama's got on their roster this year. And Auburn obviously has done very well from an NIL perspective to put their roster together. It's amazing how much this thing has turned around in just a few years.
I've mentioned this, and we're taking you a little bit longer than I asked you, and you agreed to. But in football, I do believe there are times the top 25, there's kind of an SEC bubble that, okay, well, we need to add 2 or 3 more teams inside the top 25, and that the SEC might get a little bit of a lean there because of what they've done. In basketball, they've earned it. Now, I'm not saying they have it in football, but in basketball, when you look at all of the AP records and how many they've played and the records against top 25 teams, this has been one hell of a run, no question, for the Southeastern Conference. Pat, thank you very much, buddy.
The only problem is they're 500 in conference play, though.
Yeah,
I know. See, and we can't get over that. I mean, maybe you guys are better than 500 in conference play in the Big 12. I'm not really sure.
The Big 12's 500 in conference play, and so is the Atlantic. whatever you want to call them, ACC or others. Yeah. Thank you, buddy.
Hey, guys, anytime, let's talk to you.
Thank you, Pat.
Anytime.
I wanted to get a different perspective. So not a different perspective. We love Pat. So we heard from Dan Wetzel, Yahoo. We heard from Ralph Russo, theathletic.com, and also Pat Smith right there in the meat of what is SEC territory in Birmingham, Alabama, with what he said, all the other teams and attached to other smaller conferences around him.
And there's now a moratorium on saying those three letters for the remainder of the show, as far as I've heard those three letters enough in the last hour.
What, SEC?
Yes, yeah. I've heard that to fill an entire week because of our conversation thus far. And you know what? Like, there's definitely things – I don't want to make it everything's about, like, an anti-that. You know what I mean? Like, everything has to wrap back around to the big evil empire type of a thing. Like, it doesn't all revolve around them, even though a lot does. And if you were in their chair, you'd be doing the same stuff that they're pulling. It's just that there's a level of kind of greed and takeover going on that you're just like, but why? Like, that's the thing.
Everyone needs to be checked.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of checking needed before they just blow through, and then next thing you look up and they've just made a 16-team playoff and nobody's included but them. So there needs to be like some speed bumps here and there. But, you know, I think beyond that, you go out and you earn what you earn. And they've certainly earned their fair share of the basketball talk this year and of the football talk the last several years. And you may not like it and you may get sick of it, but when you are dealing with facts, those are the facts. I just have a problem when you use facts to skew like what could happen over the next 10 years because it's not just black and white like that. And I see far too much of, well, the last 10 years this happens. Well, yeah, the Big Ten's won the last 2 national championships. How about we do that sample size? Well, that would tell, you know, so like I just think there's fudging around with some numbers as well. And mostly it's just, again, it goes back to what more do you want? Like, what more? So we need 6 teams now? Like, at what point is it just straight up greed? And that's what it feels like. And I understand you've got to pay players, and you've got to do this, and you've got to do that. But let's not act like
But so does everybody else.
So does everybody else. And you're doing it with like a $50 million advantage. That, granted, you went out and earned and all of that. But I think that's a situation where I respect it. I understand the biases and things like that. But I do think, it needs to be checked from time to time as well. But it doesn't need to be checked to the point of where it's just obsession over that entity and them being like the big evil of everything. And the Big Ten doesn't get away unscathed either, even though they've managed to position themselves where, and the Big Ten too, even though we don't stop down on them like we stop down on the SEC every single time.
All right. Thank you to Pat Smith, also Ralph Russo, also to Dan Wetzel. Well, we're going to, in a minute, look at the BYU football schedule. Paul's got to leave a little bit earlier. He's got a plumbing problem. Not you personally. Yeah, I was going to say, that's not what I meant by that.
Everything else working great.
So let's look at this. Again, tonight at 9 o'clock, Baylor and Arizona, just around the corner from us, will tip at 9 on ESPN. Baylor survived West Virginia. The game went overtime. Houston winning at Arizona on Saturday. What was the other one? BYU ended Kansas State's nice long winning streak within the conference. They now get KU this week. KU.
That's a win. That's an easy dub.
So I don't know if I was trying to create problems here.
I genuinely do have to go.
Okay, well, you can leave. We would love to talk about it.
Listen,
so I don't think I was generally trying to create a problem for Paul, but
I don't believe that either. You're the biggest instigator, shit starter.
No, you are. You're a shit
Garrett, would you agree with that?
I agree with them.
Okay.
Yeah, you're a shit starter.
All right, so I happened to wake up Sunday morning. I saw where Utah was leading Kansas late into Saturday night. I was like, I've got to go to bed. So I get up, and I see that they actually held on to win. KU didn't get all the benefits of the calls and a lot of the free throws like they normally do.
Bill Self got a tee,
and
then they won an 11-0 run. That was the last good thing.
You got to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so I sent a text out, a group text that said, Paul, we want to make sure, did you sleep with one eye or both eyes open? Are you breathing? Amanda gets the text because she took his phone.
She didn't take my phone. I willingly handed it to her so that I could continue doing what I was doing and she wouldn't keep asking me questions. And then
she saw my text.
She saw your text because she was doing something. She was booking a vacation that's a year plus out, but she was booking that. And I said, okay, here's the information that's on my phone. And so she was just doing that. And then instead of handing me back my phone, she just put it down next to her, and I might have even playing a video game. I don't know. So I was not really paying attention. And then all of a sudden she's like, hey, Smokey sent a text about KU. And you and I and her have a group chat.
Yep.
So I thought it was then. It was not.
This was Emery read it, Garrett read it.
Yeah.
This is Amanda. This is to me at 12:17 on Sunday. I have Paul's phone, and you should probably know, you should probably now sleep with one eye open, threatening me. Mm-hmm. I have evidence. Listen, I've had a lot of growth. Can I read this?
Yeah, go ahead.
I've had a lot of growth this year with my reactions as far as KU losing a lot.
Yeah, she has.
I'm choosing the quiet path so you aren't helping the process. I don't believe for 2 seconds you care about Paul's mental health because you, in fact, are adding to the grief.
Yep.
Time will tell on his well-being, but regardless, the show can go on without him as if you were no longer with us. Thank God. Yeah. And then, Paul, I have recovered my phone. So they got beat. So that's what's going on.
And here's the thing. Once she got into it, I was like, give me my damn phone.
No, you did not say that. No, you did not.
Oh, no, I did. I was like, give me that phone. Come on, please, please. And she's like, you got to calm down. I'm like, I know, but like, I'm worried that you're going to get worked up. And then she's like, well, when I finish, you can have it back. And I was just,
it's your phone.
Exactly. No, but yeah, no, it was fine.
Okay. All right. So there we are with the Big 12. So, Paul, you go on and go work on good luck with the plumbing situation at your house. So Scott Drew, after the win on Saturday against West Virginia, which was a grind, like a lot of the games are, I was there. It went into overtime. You got to have a lot of these bang-bang games, and Baylor needed it. They got it at home. They did not hit a free throw in the last 6 minutes of regulation, nor in overtime, and won by shooting free throws, a bunch of them, which, by the way, they got a lot of them.
So they didn't hit a basket. You just said they didn't hit a free throw.
They didn't hit a shot. I did not hit a field goal. In the last 6 minutes, and we have that, Garrett, did you put that up about the game? Hold on. You can walk around the other side. Oh. It's the KU basketball. Here it is right here. Go. Baylor did not make a shot in the last 6.5 minutes of regulation. They were 0 for 4 from the field in overtime and won. That's ridiculous. So next time Baylor fans want to complain about free throw shooting, look at that's how they won the game. Now, so Scott Drew, after the game, when I asked him about the quick turnaround being home to a Monday game compared to Arizona traveling.
Does the fact that you just went through a quick turnaround help out when you got a game on Monday night here at home?
I think all the experience you can learn from, build from. I think biggest thing is making sure the guys hydrate, sleep, take care of their bodies, and be ready to go because Arizona's obviously a top 25 team for a reason.
They lost today to Houston, and so they have to travel. You've had to travel after a Saturday to Monday game. What is that like, the advantage there, if anything?
I don't know what advantages are anymore. We've done that, and I think we've won and played well because you get away from the noise after a negative experience on Saturday, and you're able to bond and get together. So this is a Big 12, a lot of one-possession games. I really think early in the year you didn't have as many just because so much transition in teams, coaches trying to figure out who they wanted to play, when they want to play them. And now I think you're seeing more Big 12-like games this back half. I mean, a lot more one-possession games, a lot more hard-fought games, not the separation you've seen earlier on. And I think, again, that's just over time. You got great coaches in the Big 12, and they're going to adjust to the personnel as they get more and more used to them, and great players adjusting to the new styles that the coaches are teaching and wanting.
That's Scott Drew after the game, the win against West Virginia. Arizona tonight, 9 o'clock tip. I will be there to watch that game. Arizona still in the conversation, but Houston right now, and Iowa State, obviously, with what they've done in the Big 12. Texas Tech annihilated Oklahoma State. You know what I like? When you're good and you're playing somebody and you're supposed to win, you beat them up. Houston with a 2-game lead on Tech, and also Arizona, Iowa State 3 back at 10-4. When we come back, Keaton Thomas will not be a part of the show today. Just got that text message because of a couple of meetings. That's fine. We have plenty to talk about, and we will. This is 365 Sports. So Saturday afternoon at 12:30, you've heard and you know that I've been experiencing a stinging sensation in my left shoulder blade. I've had injections. I've had prescriptions. And I had a pretty calm, enjoyable for the most part weekend. It's kind of flared up a little bit this afternoon. And most of the time it's because when I'm sitting like this at a desk or on the show, then the way my posture, whatever, creates this. I had an MRI Saturday at Ideal MRI. Marcus was the tech. 30 minutes inside that baby. You know I'm also claustrophobic, but I have never had an issue getting inside that tube, that Ideal MRI imaging machine. Never have I been spooked. Never have I oh my God. He was fantastic. The staff, Dr. Rob Maxey, and the ownership of Ideal MRI, $497 or less every single time. I'm on Medicare, so yes, it's even less for me. In fact, at some point, nothing because of Medicare. But I love that company. I've endorsed them for a long, long time, and I've been inside that imaging machine, state-of-the-art, many different times. But 30 minutes for me, I usually I need to take a Valium or I need to take something to calm me down. He was fantastic. I had the headsets on. The MRI is done. Now I wait back to hear from what Dr. Torr and the company, pain management at Scott & White, tell me. But they are fantastic, and I had yet another personal, experience at idealmri.com in the Central Texas marketplace off I-35 in Waco.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Bud Light. Enjoy the smooth, crisp taste of Bud Light beer. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy.
All right, here we go. This 5 o'clock hour. Paul's out for the rest of the show. We'll have his top 5 in the next 30 minutes or so. Garrett Ross is running the mothership. Emery Winter is here today. He's working on 365 Sports tonight. An hour-long show, 4 segments of what we do every day and play it back in a certain way. He pieces that together. 10:30 on the local CW. Andrew is in the studio today. Craig Smoak now with me, David Smoak on 365 Sports. So, we are going 16 consecutive days, looking at the schedule, alphabetical order. We have done Arizona. We have done Arizona State, and we have done Baylor. And today, Craig, we break down BYU.
Yeah, Cougars a really nice season a year ago. And, again, this is not a prediction in February on how their schedule is going to go. It's just taking a look at them because they came out a week or so ago. Or I guess it was a couple weeks ago now. And so just taking a glance at the way they're set up. Obviously, TV time still to be announced for all these games. But we do have the skeleton of how the dates will work. And so I guess start off taking a look at that non-con. Portland State is a money win game there right out of the gate. So I'm sure they'll be feverish in Provo to watch their team smack around Portland State as they paid to do. Then turn around and the following week have Stanford, a little ACC Big 12 action in Provo, and then hit the road to East Carolina for kind of a random-ish road trip that they probably won't be making too often again in the future to take on the Pirates of ECU. So that is their first setup. But the interesting thing is they have a bye in week 3. So that's kind of early, no? I mean, I don't know what I would like that necessarily if I was BYU, but that's the way that it worked out on their schedule. They'll play Saturday, August 30th, Saturday, September 6th, and then Saturday, September the 20th. So a very early bye there for BYU, and I guess 3 games in that first month of the season.
3, they have the bye before East Carolina, road games at East Carolina, then they get Colorado, of course, to open up conference play. Portland State used to throw the ball around. Was that Mouse Davis back? And again, I'm dating myself. They used to score a ton. But that is it. Yeah, come play us in Provo. We'll win the game. We'll give you a check, and then we move on to your next game. I like that game early. I like the fact that they're playing a Power 4 school non-conference game against Stanford in week number 2.
Yeah, I mean, they're not afraid to schedule tough teams. And not that Stanford's been a tough team, but last year it was SMU in that big non-conference game that obviously did not benefit BYU probably the way that it should in the playoff conversation. I think people might be split on whether they deserve to be in the actual 12-team field or whether they deserve to get more love to be in the field. I think some people, like myself, feel like they deserve to get far more conversation. I don't know that they necessarily deserve to be in it. I think you can have that argument, and depending on who you are and what, you can go in circles on that, and everybody did. Everybody went in circles on that, but I think everybody agreed ultimately that however you felt about BYU, they did not get their share of respect the way a lot of other schools did when it came to those final spots. But, I mean, they've played Arkansas as of a couple years ago in the non-conference. I mentioned last year with SMU, and so now we know they played Baylor here recently, and now and various other teams. It's Stanford, so that'll be a nice little matchup with the ACC, like I said. So yeah, it's a respectable opening slate. The bye week that early is weird, so I don't know how much. I guess when we talk to Kalani Sitake again, we can actually ask him his feelings on that. But he's kind of a no-frills guy, so I don't imagine it's really something he's worried that much about. It's just odd timing. So Portland State, Stanford, and then a trip to East Carolina. I think you're feeling pretty good about 3-0. Maybe not knowing too much about Stanford, you'd say maybe there's a possibility there, but it'll be in Provo. So I think you feel really good about being able to navigate your non-conference schedule successfully.
Got to be a TV thing, you would think. And we'll have Kalani Sitake, of course, other coaches eventually over the next 2 or 3 months when it comes to spring football. Probably a football thing for some reason that they have that early. Who knows? Maybe it's something that teams start to do. All right, so those are the first 3. Those are the non-conference games. Portland State, Stanford at home, East. And I wonder if Stanford, if they're ever going to become relevant again. Like a team that I just always had such great respect, obviously back in the day, Bill Walsh, but even other coaches that have been there, Jim Harbaugh, David Shaw, but they really have kind of just been there in football. So at East Carolina, they open up conference at Colorado. 2 teams that last year were 2 of the better surprise, feel-good stories within the Big 12.
Yeah, and because of that early bye week, it's just interesting that they go a pretty good stretch without having another one. It'll be all the way until November the 1st. So, I mean, it's like a month, a little over a month between bye weeks, but I guess that gives you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wait, no, that's not right. Where am I jumping out here? Okay, so that would give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight games in that second wave, if you know how I kind of break them down. So you've got where most people have like 5 games and 5 games, or like 4 games, 4 games, and then 4 games, or it's 5, 4, and 3, or it's 5, 3, and 4, or whatever it may be. Theirs is 2, and then it's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a row, and then the second bye week, and then the 4. So it's just very different compared to most schedules. But yeah, it's Colorado to open things up in Big 12 play in Boulder. Don't know how good or not they'll be. You've got West Virginia at home with Rich Rod, so that'll be an interesting game. Just question marks about where the Mountaineers are, but I think there's an excitement there that hasn't been there in a long time. Road trip to Arizona. I think you feel okay about that. Utah at home. And obviously that doesn't throw the records out, as we saw last year with the latest example. Those two teams hate each other in the most fun and competitive type of way. And then travel to Iowa State, and then you finally get your second break there. So, yeah, you'll have trips to Colorado, Arizona, Iowa State, home games with West Virginia, Utah. I should add East Carolina in the road trip. So 4 road trips and 2 home games in that second little stint that you have between bye weeks. So that's kind of interesting that you're going to be traveling as much as you are there in that middle portion of the schedule. Yeah. And some teams that we just don't know. Like, based on last year, you will beat every single one of those teams that you've got lined up in that second wave. You did beat most of those teams.
Well, you did beat Colorado in a bowl game.
You beat Utah. Yeah. And I don't remember off the top of my head of everybody that they played, but because I don't remember if they played West Virginia or not. But, yeah, I think you feel great about your potential to beat all those teams.
They did not, by the way. They did not play them.
Okay. But then you do have, was it Iowa State on the road? So that'll be a game that certainly on paper looks like pretty much up to this point, and you didn't play them last year either, so that'll be a newer matchup. But pretty much up to this point, I think that's the game you're most fearing. I mean, Utah's Utah regardless, but Colorado and Arizona and West Virginia, I mean, I don't think you're feeling like you can't beat those teams no matter what. No matter if you're looking at it from last year's perspective, if you're looking at all their changes, like, you feel like you're one of the best teams, if not the best team in the Big 12. So I think all the way up until about mid to late October, when you strap them up against Utah and then turn around and go to Ames, I think you're feeling really good about your chance to be unbeaten at that point.
Utah, which we know is a great rivalry, at Iowa State and at Tech. I'm just saying, that 3-game stretch right there, but we're going in sections, I know, but that's a heck of a nice little threesome right there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Is like, I mean, if Colorado turns out to be really, really good, that trip to Boulder maybe looks a little bit different. If West Virginia's a big turnaround, and look, they don't have to be like a massive turnaround. They were still a bowl-ish type team with Neil Brown. So it's not like they're coming out of the dregs of like wanting, one or two, like they're not Kennesaw State. Like they have to be completely rebuilt. He could get them turned around in a hurry, especially in this NIL era. But yeah, on paper, you feel great up until just getting into that stretch there that you mentioned. Utah, at Iowa State, break, and then at Texas Tech, who obviously is being looked at as, one of the better teams on paper in the league. It's another team you did not play last year, so there's going to be a lot of new on this schedule for them compared to last season's schedule. But, so that Texas Tech road game will start that third and final leg. In that third and final leg, you've got some Texas flavor there in those first two with the trip to Lubbock, home against TCU, at Cincinnati, home versus UCF is how you will close it out. So, you do have 6 road games, which is not what everybody has. Everybody always tries to kind of like get it to the 7-5, right? If you can possibly
4-8,
can.
Yeah.
But you do have 6 road games, 5 of those coming in Big 12 play, of course, and then that East Carolina game. That sort of feels like almost an outlier in a way. But I think that late October, early November, that 4-game stretch of Utah, Iowa State, Texas Tech, TCU, and trips to Ames and Lubbock there in the middle of that seems like it would be kind of your pivotal stretch of the schedule. But, of course, who knows where they will be at that point.
5 of 7 games in the midsection of their schedule are road games.
Yeah.
5 of them. And, they open up with those 2 home games, and then they have 2 of the last 3 at home. But that's a chunk. And here's the thing. Based on history, we don't know who's going to be better or about the same or as good as we expect in the Big 12. I think this year, it might settle down a little bit, but my God, that's a dumb thing to say based on the history we've seen pre-expansion or pre-realignment or whatever else when it comes to the Big 12.
Let's try to make it very clear this is not a prediction as much as it is just taking a look at it and giving our initial thoughts on it. Because it is going to change, and it'll look like a lot different. There will be an Arizona who you expect to be pretty good that's not good at all. There will be a BYU who or an Arizona State who you don't expect much out of at all, and they end up winning the conference. BYU didn't win the conference, but they ended up being one of the definitely top 3 teams in the league, maybe 2, depending on your opinion of them versus Iowa State. But, it's a schedule that's definitely one that kind of gets tougher on paper as you get into the late October, November part of it. But even down the stretch, those last couple of weeks, I mean, Cincinnati and UCF, they got a lot of proving to do to make me fear those games if I'm BYU. So, yeah, it's that Utah at Iowa State, at Texas Tech, home against TCU block with a bye week in there that I think will maybe be their toughest stretch. But, if West Virginia's a lot better, then maybe that throws a wrench in their plans earlier. They do avoid, and I give them credit, they play 10 power conference games. I think that was in their write-up. You do have some first-time matchups, as I mentioned, but you also will have some teams that you're not playing, and that will include where did that go? I just had that a second ago. That will include Baylor, obviously. They're not playing them. So on paper, that's probably a good team to avoid because they look like they'll likely be in the upper part of the schedule. You don't play Arizona State, so that's good. You don't play Kansas State. That's good. You don't play Houston. It probably doesn't matter. Oklahoma State.
God knows who
probably
they
doesn't
are.
matter.
Brett Blake could help us out,
but it could. I mean, you don't know, but yeah, I mean, I think you're happy to not play Arizona State, Baylor, or Kansas State just in terms of your overall record. So those are teams that you could very well. I mean, if you were to do like a bet of the field versus K-State, Arizona State, and Baylor making the Big 12 championship game, I think they'd probably have some people maybe place it on those three.
A parlay, right?
So yeah, I think they were fortunate there. And yeah, they'll get some first time meetings.
It's interesting that you end the season with a non-conference bowl game against a conference team, and that's the first team you play to open up conference the next year. It's just weird how things like that seem to open up.
Well, that sets a storyline in motion to really play up the fact that you did play just recently. But yeah, they will play West Virginia for the first time. As far as the is this their third year in the Big 12 now, right? Yeah, because last year was the first year. So as far as the teams that weren't on the schedule last year, and I don't remember 2023 off the top of my head, but they will play West Virginia, Iowa State, Texas Tech, TCU, Cincinnati. They did not play them last year. And obviously Iowa State ended up being very good. Tech and TCU were feisty, and who knows how those games would have gone. And then West Virginia and Cincy. West Virginia, Cincy, you probably feel like you still would have won those games. But, yeah, I mean, it's a solid schedule, especially as you get later and deeper into it. But that's just on paper, of course.
2023, their conference games included KU, Cincinnati, TCU, and Tech, UT, West Virginia, Iowa State, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State.
Yeah, so they played most of those teams, if not all of those teams.
So there we are that's BYU. Coming off what was a just phenomenal year. I got a question for you. I think there's no doubt that Arizona State was probably the best story last year because of who they were, where they were picked, what they did, were a play away from or a drop pass or whatever.
Targeting call.
Or just making another play of playing in the semifinals. But if you took both the surprising in a good way and the surprising in a somewhat surprising, like shocking way, like Oklahoma State or whoever else, how would you rate that? How would you, if you took the most surprising disappointments and the most surprising, wow, what a year, how would you do that? How would any of the surprisingly disappointing teams get in the top 3 or 4 of them?
I think you could make a case for Utah.
Yeah, I think they'd definitely be somebody you feel confident. And if they don't bounce back, that's probably the end of an era, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, if they don't, they're probably moving on to a new head coach because you're fighting, against the current.
Could we see Whittingham and Gundy both gone at the end of next year?
I mean, if it was last year's, if they repeat last year, then yes, they will both be gone. I highly doubt that that's the case for both of them. I know there's plenty of people that still don't feel like Oklahoma State will be that much better. I don't know. I'm not all the way there yet. I need to kind of let them sizzle a little bit. I mean, that's the thing is part of the reason why this is in predictions is it's just far too early. I mean, we could turn it into that. But I need to learn about these teams some more. Like there's been all this transfer portal, and I haven't sat down and just looked at Oklahoma State and gone like, all right, who do they have again, and who's back and who's not? And like I know Ollie Gordon's not there, but like who's the quarterback? Who's the I think it's Haas Haney now, but
well, let's not. Yeah, you're right. We're looking at the schedule because otherwise we could get tied up.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, but based on the schedule, I've done this for the first three. Like Arizona State, going back to them, they should be, for all intents and purposes, right there back in the conversation where they ended last year as far as competing for the Big 12 based on, like, almost the series should be titled, like, on paper. I mean, really. But on paper, you feel good about Arizona State being competitive again as they were last year. On paper, Arizona's a big question mark. I don't know that you feel all that great about them, and Brent Brennan is another guy who might be out if they don't turn things around next year. Baylor, on paper, I think they've got a schedule that they can handle. I think they are definitely a bowl team, probably closer to 8 wins than they are to, like, more than that. But, yeah, definitely a team that you feel like can compete for the title next year because of how they sort of found themselves. But, again, we're applying last year to this year, and that led us to Utah being at the top of the poll and Arizona State being at the bottom of the poll. So when it comes to the league, I mean, who the hell really knows? There's not – the thing with it that makes it more difficult is there's not an automatic 2 or 3 you can just put at the top, and you know that no matter what, they're going to finish somewhere in the top. Like, you just – Georgia, Texas, Alabama. You think I'm probably going to get at least 2 of the top 4 by just picking those teams without even looking at them? Yeah, probably, right? Florida State, Clemson, Miami. Now, that's not always an exact science, but 1 or 2 of those teams is going to – Clemson made the playoff, right? So, but who is that in the Big 12? Like the Big 10, Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan. Probably going to nail it. Oh, there's 2 playoff teams right there. Mm-hmm. Here's the last 2 national titles. In the Big 12 –
it's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it is so much fun and it is like a freaking roller coaster. At the same time, the conference needs to have 3 to 4 that year in and year out are on a pretty good run.
Yeah, they need some to establish themselves, but it's just when you're on equal footing, there's not really much separating these teams historically, monetarily. I mean, there's definitely some dips, like BYU's got a lot more money than Houston. We know that. But, I mean, on the football field, I don't think it creates a huge difference the way it maybe does in other places. But, yeah, there's not that top dog 2 or 3 that have kind of been running the league or at least getting a lot of the attention like Oklahoma and Texas brought to you. So that leaves just a big old question mark, I think, year in and year out, because you can't predict that will just carry over the way that it did. And we had 2 glorious examples of that. One at the very top that ended up right near the very bottom, one at the very bottom that ended up at the very top. And no other league is like that, because I don't think any other league from top to bottom is looking each other eye to eye as much as that league, which makes for a lot of fun, but it also definitely is a situation that you create a lot of self-inflicted wounds that hurt your playoff standing potentially, hurt your championship hopes. And so it's what you love about it, but it's also what kind of can hurt it as well. So maybe somebody like Texas Tech spends $10 million on transfer portal talent, and that puts them at the top of the league, and they're able to spend $10 million every year and just stay there and kind of carve out a spot for themselves. But I highly doubt it. I just think there's too many close teams to really have somebody dominate it without having some just – gold rush of NIL, which, Tech arguably does have to some extent, but I know they're not just so far out in front. Yeah, and they haven't done it right. So you can pay for it, but you got to actually go do it. And they haven't done that second part just yet. If they do, then maybe they're onto something. But until then, yeah, every team in this league's got to string some stuff together. Arizona State, BYU, whoever.
Yep, they do, and it's hard. Oklahoma did in the history of the Big 12. Early on, it was Nebraska and Kansas State. And then here comes Oklahoma. Then they carried it for a long, long time. Texas, of course, a part of that mix. Oklahoma State for a while, and then it got to be hit and miss, of course, the last a handful of years. They played for the Big 12 title back-to-back years just 2-3 years ago. Lost to Baylor and got smoked by Texas the year that they went to the semifinals the first time.
I would say on paper, bare minimum, BYU's looking at like 8 wins. And I think that would probably be a disappointment for some of their fans with Wetzel coming back and just the momentum of last year.
They were 11-2 last year. That would be a disappointment.
Yeah, it would definitely be a disappointment, but I think that's your low end. That's where you're like, all right, if the season goes sideways in that late season, that 4-game stretch, like things get a little squirrely, then maybe you take a couple more losses than you anticipated. But they should be good on paper. They should be feeling like last year's something they can replicate, because I know that for whatever close win they might have had, they had a close loss, right? So I think with a bulk of those guys back, you are looking at trying to get into the playoff if you're BYU and win the Big 12. And not just that's everybody's goal, but like you legitimately have reason to believe that you can go and do that. And so that should be the goal, and I think that should be kind of the threshold for them.
Okay, we were going to get into a story that we can talk about anytime this week on the accusations against former Miami Dolphins and Nebraska offensive lineman Richie Incognito by Jonathan Martin. Remember that huge investigative piece, and Incognito was basically blackballed from the league. Story came out today that Martin admitted that he was not bullied. That's for a longer segment, so we're going to push that back into another day. Paul's top 5 is just around the corner, but wanted to get into that, and we'll try to reschedule Keaton Thomas if we possibly can. I got a question for the chat as we close it out before we get to Paul's top 5. I mentioned the quote earlier about how college football has been on this exhilarating, sometimes clutch your pearls type run, really ever since about 2020 with COVID, NIL, transfer portal, conference realignment, conference championship game, all of the arms race. Are you enjoying it? Has it been enjoyable for you? Or are you exhausted, like I mentioned with that quote that I read from earlier in the show? Is it like, I would like to see a couple of years in a row where things are the same, and then again, I don't know if we'll ever see that again.
Well, good luck programming the show with everything all calmed down. It'll be a lot of interesting. I mean, from our standpoint, it's great. It's frustrating as a fan, but
absolutely.
I also don't want to sit there and bog down in the negative, because this was also arguably one of the best seasons from an entertainment standpoint ever.
Absolutely. My point is that we grew because of all the crazy.
Yeah, but that wasn't your point. Your point was you're asking a question about the
as a
the
fan,
craziness. Yeah.
are you like worn out with all of the changes in such a short amount of time?
Yeah, I don't know that I really want to.
Or has it just been hell? It's just been great.
I think it just is what it is, and like we don't need to make it like a.
Well, I mean,
are you able to withstand more change? And like I guess for some people that's probably a dilemma that they're having, but I'm not trying to look at it that way myself. For me personally,
yeah,
I think it's great for the show. I don't necessarily enjoy the daily just sort of drama that's overblown, but it's definitely good for the show, and it's made things interesting.
Burned out. I'm so over the chaos. Too much, too fast, need some stability. Everything off the field is annoying. Super fatigued. But I appreciate the way you guys have covered it. Love the on-field, off-field stuff is out of control. If House versus NCAA falls apart and the lawsuits begin, I'll give up.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I mean, I can't really necessarily think about it that way because we got to talk a lot about that stuff sometimes, but I understand its place in it. Like, y'all guys know me. I don't like talking about all this legal stuff. I don't like it. I would prefer not to talk about that. So that does dent my fandom a little bit. I would prefer to not have to talk about lawyers and bargaining, and I understand that that's a part of just the sports fabric professionally or otherwise, but we've had enough lawyer talk in college sports for a lifetime, and it just feels like there's more of those sharks in the water, whether it's lawyers or it's these agents who may or may not have any real backing whatsoever. I don't know. That part of it is something that wears on me, and that's why sometimes you'll just see me sort of sit out and not really take part in it because it's just not my bag. So, I'm sure there's a lot of other examples.
And more, we'll close it out with this. We'll get to Paul's top 5. Exhausted. It's fun in conference, but it's sad that money ruins and runs everything. The lawyers always win.
Yeah.
So there we are. Thanks for a lot of your quick feedback on that, but super fatigued probably. It's been fun. There's times I'm like, man, this is incredible. And then there's times I like Craig, you said, the legal part of it has it's even legal when it came to conference realignment, the like wear and tear of that. It's not going to change much, even if they do figure out the next level of what they do with college football playoff, because the House settlement is not done yet.
Well, once that's done, then we can close a chapter at least and move on from that, because every time I see a House article and it's just more of like, we believe it's supposed to, I mean, that's when I roll my eyes. Again, that gets into legal stuff. So, yeah, I'm super fatigued by that. I mean, it's not denting my overall love for the game. It has become more of a year-round sport, for better or worse. I just think we've got to make it a point to not dwell on the negative, and maybe not talk as much about the lawyer stuff as, unless it's warranted. But
it's almost impossible that.
I think it's avoidable in some ways, but yeah, there's some places where you can't get away from that, like the settlement. If you want to talk about that, you have to talk about the lawyer part, but you don't have to talk about the settlement hopefully here pretty soon, and that'll be one less thing. But definitely been a chaotic couple years, and you hope that there's calmer seas, but chaos is part of also why a lot of people love the sport. So
you're right. But you wondered if Keith Jackson or someone like that all of a sudden came back to earth and they looked around at college football, they would not even recognize it. They would not recognize
James
it.
Naismith recognize the NBA? Would Bart Starr recognize what Patrick Mahomes is doing? I mean, you know what I mean?
I was just making a point.
No, I know. I just think that, times change. I mean, 50 years go by and things are vastly different than they were, or 30 years, and when Keith Jackson was around, they weren't paying squat to the players. I would think if Keith Jackson was really a fan of college sports, that he'd be happy the players are getting paid.
Yeah,
he may not like how it was being done.
I don't think he'd like some of the traditions that have gone by the wayside, probably, just like anyone would if they lived it and understood it and loved it the way they did. The part about the House settlement conundrum, if House versus NCAA falls apart, and the lawsuits begin, I'll give up. Because if it does fall apart, because they're right there on the doorstep, but you never know how that can change. The Title IX thing at least was taken care of in the last 8 to 10 days, or last couple of weeks, which helps. Paul Catalina at his top 5 is next.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Ticket Club. Forget the fees, just big savings. Click the link in the description to find out more.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5 here on 365 Sports. Right now, top 5 cornerbacks in the 2025 NFL Draft. Let's dive in, shall we? Number 5. This is not a homer pick. I swear to God. I swear to you. Look, there is not a group of 22 college starters that I have less love for than the 2024 Florida State Seminoles. Believe me. This is not. But one of the few guys on this team that was a bright spot on a 2-10 disaster of a crap pile of a team was Azareye'h Thomas. How about 12 total completions this year? 12 total completions.
The FSU defense was a walking first down, except when it came to Azareye'h Thomas. They did not mess with him. That's a big deal. He fits in really well as a slot nickel corner in the NFL right away. He can play on the outside as well, but he can really help you out special teams as well. Good with the ball in his hands, really good tackler, not afraid of anything. Azareye'h Thomas from FSU. Number 4, Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame. I have no problem saying this. Had Benjamin Morrison been healthy for the playoffs and the national championship game, Notre Dame would have been a lot more in it against Ohio State than they were. He is that good of a player. He is fantastic. Ask Bobby Taylor, former Notre Dame legend at cornerback, about him and spoke glowingly of him. Big, long, tall, can catch the ball, can cover pretty much anybody of any size and speed, fast, big, rangy arms, all those measurables you like. Plus, he's just a gutsy player. It sucks for college football and for Notre Dame that we didn't get to see him for a big chunk of this year, and probably would be higher on this list if he had played. That's how good he is. Number 3, Jahdae Barron from Texas. Cornerback, safety, whatever you need him to do, he can do it. So if you need a cornerback, he can play cornerback. If you need a safety right away, he can do that. He played both positions. He excelled at them both. He's a ball hawk. He's a tackler. Again, he's not spectacular when it comes to size, but he's just an absolute baller. He gets after it. He was a key cog in the Texas secondary that was so good for the last couple years. Jahdae Barron from Texas, way high on my list. Number 2, Will Johnson from Michigan, one of the top 5 players in the entire draft by most services. He is fantastic. This is, of course, him here getting beat, but that's one of the only times it's going to happen. He is absolutely fantastic. He played in that Michigan defense. He was a key part of it. A lot like Benjamin Morrison. Actually, Benjamin Morrison, a lot like him. Long, tall, rangy, can cover everybody of every size, can cover the tight end. Whatever you need him to do, he can do that. Will Johnson, going to be a top 10 pick in this year's draft. And, of course, number 1, it's Travis Hunter. He does so many things. Now, Will Johnson might be a better pure cornerback than him. There's probably better pure wide receivers like Teteroa McMillian. But he does both to an A level. So maybe he's not A+ at both, but he's A at both, which I think averages out pretty well. He's 4.0 at cornerback and wide receiver, top of his class. So Travis Hunter, obviously number 1. I don't have to wax rhapsodically about all the things he can do, but he's got fantastic hands, which means he can intercept the ball. He's got fantastic speed, so that means that he can keep up with you. And when he does intercept the ball, he's a threat to score. He's not a bad tackler, but of course he was coached by one of the famous non-tacklers in the history of the world in Deion Sanders. But I don't think that really matters when it comes to Travis Hunter. The guy is an absolute gamer. Plus, he has the stamina of, a Kenyan marathon runner. He just can go and go and go. He's playing 120 plays a game sometimes. No one, and I mean no one else in college football did that. And no one in the NFL has to do it either. So it's pretty amazing what he can do. That's going to do it for us here on 365 Sports. Smokey, time to go, buddy.
All right, thank you very much. Paul's working on his plumbing at the house, and so he'll be back when we start tomorrow. Triple option at 1. Craig and I will be back here again with him at 3. Tomorrow, Andrew and Emery, we appreciate you. Those of you sponsors, or those of you watching our show, we appreciate it however you digest it. At 365 Sports YT on Twitter, also on YouTube, 365 Sports, and Sikkim 365 app. For Garrett and Emery and Andrew, and, of course, our great sponsors. For Craig and Paul, I'm David Smoak. Thanks for your time. See you again tomorrow. Have a great night. 10:30 tonight. 365 Sports on the CW.